So this drama kicks off someone dramatically falling off a lighthouse into the ocean, right? A guy is falling off a lighthouse into the ocean thinking, how did things go so horribly wrong? Cut to the present, Lin Bei-shing, a 30-year-old woman, wakes up in a panic because she's late for work. Her mom insists she eats breakfast, but Bei-shing declares that she'll eat on the way. Fighting through the morning crowd, she manages to get on the bus, checks her phone, and tragedy number 2 hits. A notification reminds her that her longtime boyfriend, Zhan Yu, the very man she was supposed to marry in 10 days, has dumped her. His reason? Feelings just aren't the same anymore. Bei-shing had been crushing on Zhan Yu since school, so naturally she was shaken. She has no idea how to break the news to her family or friends, but capitalism doesn't pause for heartbreak. She reaches work, which is a zoo. Not only does she have an office job, but she also has to wear animal costumes and entertain kids. After work, she pathetically tries to call Zhan Yu again, and she gets zero response from him. She sends tearful voice notes and then gets drunk by the sea, yelling about her misfortunes. A wise old man who walks up and in the most mysterious way possible asks, "Did your wedding get canceled?" Bei-shing, understandably freaked out, demands to know how he knew. The old man simply explains that only heartbroken women come here. Bei-shing declares that she will win Zhan Yu back, but before she can run off, the old man shoves a fishing rod in her hands and cryptically advises her to let go because she'll never be happy with Zhan Yu anyway. The real person she should be with, she left them far behind. Before she can process this nonsense, she turns around and the old man has vanished. Bei-shing stumbles home, only to get yelled at by her mom, who is furious that she's been out all night while there's a whole wedding to plan. Bei-shing, smiling like a woman who definitely isn't spiraling, heads to her room, still thinking about the old man. Then, she has an idea, and she grabs her old school uniform and ancient phone, takes a photo, and sends it to Zhan Yu. She tells him that if he shows up tomorrow at their school in uniform, she will forgive everything and pretend the breakup never happened, because that's healthy. The next day, dressed in her school uniform, Bei-shing eagerly waits at the school, convinced Zhan Yu will come. Hours pass, no sign of him. Just as she's about to delete his messages in defeat, suddenly dark clouds gather, rain starts pouring. Suddenly, a guy, Zhang Wansen, appears out of nowhere and covers her with an umbrella. And hold up, isn't this the same guy who fell off the lighthouse? But Bei-shing, too consumed with her Zhan Yu obsession, barely notices him, because Zhan Yu finally shows up in his school uniform. Bei-shing sprints toward him, practically screaming, "I knew you'd come!" But Zhan Yu jerks his hand away and steps back, saying, "How many times do I have to tell you to stay away from me? Do you have no self-respect?" And with that, he walks away. Bei-shing, utterly shattered, decides to head home, but wait for a signboard that says 2010. Turns out, just by deleting a single message, she time-traveled back to the past. And the worst part? She had just been talking to 2010's Zhan Yu, but because she's too busy being heartbroken, she doesn't even notice. She boards a bus, lost in thought, only to realize that Wansen is also in the same bus. He is giving stalker vibes, holding out an umbrella. He says you'll get drenched. Bei-shing, still in shock, takes it without question. Stepping outside, she recalls the old man who had cryptically told her she had left her happiness behind. But when she turned, there was no one, and she headed to her home. Meanwhile, Wansen watches her walk away like she's the only reason he exists. Back home, Bei-shing absent-mindedly places Wansen's umbrella somewhere, completely unaware that her house has changed too. She heads straight to her room, now a typical anime-obsessed Asian teenager's paradise, and cries herself to sleep. Then, her old phone starts buzzing wildly with texts. Next morning, she wakes up, back in the present. One of her friends messages her, asking about wedding preparations. Bei-shing, still disoriented, lies through her teeth that everything's fine. Her friend says she'll come to pick her up, and Bei-shing, confused, asks, when exactly? The friend reminds her that she mentioned in the group chat last week that she is coming because of that incident. When Bei-shing opens the chat, she spots that guy, Wansen, the umbrella dude. Now curious, she asks her friend about him. The friend laughs. Wow, Bei-shing, how could you forget school topper Wansen? Well, it's possible because you were always too busy orbiting around Zhan Yu. Shocked, Bei-shing rushes outside to find the umbrella, but it's gone. When she asked her little brother about it, he told her that she didn't bring anything home. And just as she's trying to process all of this, the TV flashes news about some bizarre time travel event. And then the doorbell rings. It's Zhan Yu. Bei-shing thought everything was finally going to be okay. Zhan Yu showed up at her place not to patch things up, but to return all her stuff. He also casually dropped the bomb that she shouldn't contact him ever again. Furious, Beixing snapped, "If that was the case, you could have just given me my stuff in school this morning." Zhan Yu, unfazed, replied that he hadn't gone to school because, well, he had burned his uniform after school yesterday. Totally impossible, according to Beixing. She accused him of lying, but before their argument could escalate, her brother appeared. He cheerfully invites his brother-in-law for some noodles. Zhan Yu, however, ignored him and walked away. Despite her brother's relentless questioning, Beixing stayed silent. She took the noodles he had made and retreated to her room, lost in thought. Why had Zhan Yu lied about not going to school? That's when her brain went full detective mode, recalling the whole time travel incident. She laughed at herself that it's not possible, but then a realization hit her. The last time she deleted a message, it started raining. Everything changed. Curious, she tried deleting another message, and the next thing she knew, she was back at school. Just as she was processing this insanity, Zhan Yu walked past, his friend teasing him. "Look, your shadow is here." Zhan Yu shut him up and turned to Beixing. "No matter how hard you try, you can't get close to me, so take your sad little face and stay away." Beixing didn't respond. She just watched him leave, wondering how on earth she had ever liked this arrogant fool. Later, as she walked home, nostalgia hit her hard. Everything looked so different. Even her house wasn't the same. And when she spotted Zhan Yu's pictures on her wall, instant rage, and she ripped them off. Meeting her mom, she hugged her tightly and blurted, "Wow, you guys look so young." Naturally, her parents were very confused. She then casually suggested her dad buy that beachside property because its price would skyrocket in the future. Her dad laughed. With what money? That's when her mom started yelling about his much-awaited promotion and whether Beixing was even preparing for her college entrance exams. Beijing, completely spiraling, shouted, "No, I am not taking that cursed exam again." The next day, they dragged her to the exam hall. With zero knowledge, she decided to pass time instead of the test. When she finally walked out, she sat at the bus stop and spotted Wen Sen. For no reason, she went right up to him, read his name tag, and struck up a conversation. But Wen Sen was internally losing his mind. "Hey, our bus is here, let's go," she said casually. Wen Sen, shocked, and asked, "Wait, how do you know this is my bus?" Beixing, smirking, told him that I had seen our class topper take this bus many times. "I know everything. Maybe you don't know me, but that's fine." But Wen Sen was happy and shy at the same time because this was the first time Beixing ever noticed him. They rode the bus together. Back home, her mom asked about the exam. Beixing ignored her and locked herself in her room. She wondered that if she deleted another message, would she return to the present? Just as she was about to try, her phone exploded with notifications, and suddenly she was back. She woke up to find her noodle bowl shattered on the floor. Her mom and brother rushed in, worried. "Did I fail my college entrance exam?" she asked, dazed. Her brother snorted. "Okay, you were a terrible student, but somehow you passed. But why are you suddenly asking about the old entrance exam?" As he cleaned up the mess, he casually added, "Just don't stress too much, okay?" As if he knew something was off between her and Zhan Yu. Later, Beixing got a message from Zhan Yu, telling your family about the cancellation of their wedding. She left him to read. The next day, life resumed its annoying routine. Kids at the zoo drove her crazy, and back home she spiraled into regrets. "If only I had focused on my studies instead of Zhan Yu, my life wouldn't be like this." Determined, she Googled the 2010 entrance exam answers and started taking notes. The next morning at breakfast, she was still memorizing them. Her mom, puzzled, asked, "What are you even studying at 30? Beixing, dead serious, said that it was just an office competition. She locked herself in her room and actually studied this time, because she is going back to the past again, and this time she wasn't just going to pass, she was going to top that exam. Beixing had dozed off while studying when she was startled awake by a call from her workplace. Still groggy, she picked up the phone, only to hear her boss scolding her for being late. Panicking, she hurried to get ready, fumbling around in a half-awake state. As she tried to gather herself, more messages from her boss poured in, each one a warning that being late again would not end well for her. Overwhelmed and exhausted, she slumped into her chair. Then, a notification flashed on her phone, and she suddenly remembered something important, that she had to go back in time. Without wasting a second, she took a deep breath and quickly deleted the message. The moment she did, everything around her shifted, and she found herself back in the past. Blinking in shock, she looked around, trying to process what had just happened. Once the initial disbelief wore off, she immediately grabbed her notebook and started writing down all the answers she had memorized. At that moment, Tanji, her best friend, approached her. With a curious expression, Tanji asked how Beixing was managing to study with such intense focus, wondering if she had finally upgraded her brain. Beixing, Overjoyed to see her friend again, couldn't help but comment on how cute and soft-skinned Tangi had always been. Tangi, looking thoroughly disturbed, stepped back and asked what was wrong with her. She then casually mentioned that Beixing was probably feeling down after confessing to Zhan Yu the previous day, only to be rejected once again. Beixing stared at her in horror and immediately asked if that had really happened. She then hurried to clarify that she no longer liked Zhan Yu and had no intention of wasting any more attention on him. Tangi, clearly unconvinced, gave her a doubtful look before walking away. Later, after studying for what felt like an eternity, she smirked to herself, determined that this time it wouldn't be Wen Sen who was taking the top spot. It would be her. Everyone gathered on the ground for a group photo. Students from both Class A and Class B were present. As soon as Zhan Yu arrived, all the girls admired his handsome looks. He moved to his designated spot, but some students pushed him toward Beixing. Since everyone knew that Beixing had a crush on Zhan Yu, they took the opportunity to tease them. Zhan Yu became irritated, and Beixing, embarrassed, also frowned. Hearing the commotion, the teacher arrived and scolded the students, especially those from Class B, accusing them of never being able to work peacefully. He further criticized them for wasting the time of Class A students instead of focusing on their studies. Beixing, a student of Class B, feeling defensive, questioned how the teacher could compare the two classes and argued that exams were not as difficult as they were made to seem. The teacher then challenged her by asking her to explain what preparations she had made for the upcoming college entrance exam. Without hesitation, Beixing started explaining the crow topic, confidently stating that it would definitely appear in the exam. However, the other students laughed at her claims. Annoyed, she warned them that if they didn't study that topic, they would regret it later, because she was damn sure it would come in the exam. Despite her confidence, no one believed her and continued mocking her. The teacher took the mic away from her, and Beixing hurriedly told Tangi not to forget to study that topic. However, even Tangi did not take her words seriously. On the college entrance day, Beixing entered the exam hall. She wrote down her answers because the questions were exactly what she had studied. She was the first to complete the exam and left the hall feeling extremely happy. After the exam, students began heading home. While on the bus, Beixing once again met Wen. As she nearly lost her balance, Wen Sen caught her just in time. She then proudly told him that the topic she had predicted did indeed appear on the exam. Hearing this, Wen Sen smiled. Beixing then asked if he could write the school topper's speech for her, as he did every year, but this time, she would be the one needing it, not him. Wen Sen, surprised, looked at her without responding. Instead, he pointed out an empty seat and suggested they sit down. The two of them then took their seats. Beixing arrived home feeling extremely happy. She excitedly informed her mother that she had done exceptionally well on the exam and was confident that she would get admitted to the best university. However, her mother remained skeptical, advising her to focus on passing first, before dreaming about university. Annoyed, Beixing asked why her mother always doubted her abilities. As the time neared 6:30 in the evening, her mother reminded her that her father would be home soon. Beixing sat down and started using her phone when suddenly, at exactly 6:30, something unusual happened. This time, she managed to see some messages related to the lighthouse incident before another time travel event occurred. In an instant, Beixing found herself back in the present. As soon as she woke up, she received a call from her office. Meanwhile, her mother scolded her, asking why she hadn't answered her ringing phone. Beixing realized that she had returned to the present, but nothing had changed this time either. Suddenly finding herself back in the present, she quickly rushed to her workplace, where the meeting had already started. She tried to quietly take her seat without being noticed by her boss, but that did not happen. Because of her mistake, her boss noticed her and scolded her harshly. During the meeting, the team was discussing what changes could be made to the zoo to attract more visitors. The boss presented a 10-year-old water activity and suggested that they should implement something similar in their zoo. Seeing this, Beixing recalled how she had once won a pair of shoes in a competition in the same event. She had taken them to Zhan Yu as a gift, but he had outright refused to accept them. She had then told him that at least he could accompany her on stage while she sang a song for him, but Zhan Yu had refused even that, saying that standing on stage with her would be embarrassing for him. He had left, leaving Beixing standing there, unable to understand why Zhan Yu disliked her so much. Lost in these memories, she was startled back to the present when her boss handed her the file for the water activity, instructing her to prepare it. Now he had ended up giving herself extra work. Later, as Beixing was working, she started thinking about time travel and why she had suddenly returned to the present. She remembered that the first time she had traveled back in time, she had returned to the present as soon as she came home after her college entrance exam. This time, the same thing had happened. She had come back right after finishing her exam. She realized that if this pattern continued, she would not be able to change her future. Just then, she received a message from Zhan Yu telling her that he had canceled their honeymoon tour and that she should inform her family about their breakup as soon as possible. Annoyed, Beixing thought about how she was already stressed about changing her future, and now, on top of that, she had to deal with these messages. After thinking it over, she decided to travel back in time again. As soon as she deleted the message, she found herself back in the past, this time 2 days before the college entrance exam. She saw herself once again offering the shoes to Zhan Yu, who refused to take them. But this time, instead of being upset, she threw the shoes away, saying sarcastically that she had not even intended to give them to him. Zhan Yu looked at her in surprise and walked away, wondering what had suddenly changed in her. As Beixing stood there alone, a water balloon accidentally hit her. It was thrown by Wen Sen, who immediately came over to apologize. She told him it was okay and then walked away. The next day, Beixing and her best friend Tanguy were walking together when Tanguy, as usual, couldn't stop talking about Zhan Yu. She went on and on about how perfect he was, an amazing basketball player, and in her words, so incredibly handsome that even the sun was jealous of his glow. Beixing, unimpressed, pointed out that while Zhan Yu might excel in sports, he was absolutely terrible at what truly mattered, studying. Unfortunately for her, Zhan Yu happened to be within earshot. Annoyed, he turned to her and remarked that before criticizing others, she should take a good look at herself, as she wasn't exactly topping the school rankings either. Hearing him, Tanguy finally said, "At least he acknowledged your existence." Beixing rolled her eyes. Then came the college entrance exam day. Again. Determined, Beixing tackled the exam with confidence, answering everything she had memorized. As she made her way home by bus, she silently prayed that she wouldn't be yanked back to the present before she could finally change her future. As usual, she ran into Wen Sen on the bus. He was still apologizing for the water balloon incident, though at this point, Beixing was convinced he was legally required to bring it up at least once every time they met. She told him he had already apologized enough, and that there was no need to keep repeating it. Noticing that he was listening to music, she asked if she could listen to anything to relieve some of the stress from the exams. Back at home, nerves began to creep in. She vividly remembered how last time she had been pulled back to the present at exactly 6:30. Watching the clock, she held her breath as it struck 6:30, then 6:31, and yet, she was still there. She had done it. She wasn't being dragged back to the present this time. Overwhelmed with joy, she felt confident that she had finally broken the cycle. However, just as she was celebrating, she received a flood of news notifications. Curious, she glanced at her phone, only to feel her heart drop. The text was about Wen Sen, the school topper who had jumped from the lighthouse and took his life. Beixing stared at the screen, frozen. Before she could even process what she was reading, the familiar force yanked her back into the present. Still in shock, she struggled to comprehend why Wen Sen would take such a drastic step. He had seemed completely fine when she last saw him. Something wasn't adding up. Then it hit her. She hadn't been able to change her future because Wen Sen's death was the trigger pulling her back. If she truly wanted to change her fate, she had only one choice. She had to protect Wen Sen and stop him from taking his own life. Just then, Beixing received messages from her mother, who was selecting a wedding dress. She felt upset, thinking about how sad her family would be when she told them about her breakup. So, she decided to go back into the past once again. She deleted the messages and returned to a time 5 days before the college entrance exam. Upon arrival, she asked her mother if she was still a senior high school student, to which her mother confirmed. Later, when her mother sent her to the market to buy some items, she was about to leave when she encountered Wen Sen. He grabbed her hand and started running, taking her along with him. Beixing noticed that he was running away from a red-haired man. Once they stopped, she asked why he had dragged her along and who those people were. Wen Sen explained that they were gangsters he had encountered at the internet cafe. He then asked if he should drop her home, but Beixing refused, saying she would go on her own. As she was leaving, she stopped for a moment and advised him to go straight home and stay away from the lighthouse. Wen Sen, confused, wondered why she specifically warned him about the lighthouse. The next day, a girl came to school while riding a bicycle to school. Her name was Gagi. She was the daughter of Beixing's class teacher, Min. However, their relationship was not so good, to say the least. Meanwhile, Tanji was persistently asking Beixing to attend the festival with her, assuring her that she would even ask Zhan Yu to join them. However, Beixing firmly declined, stating that Zhan Yu was not special enough to convince her to attend the festival. Unfortunately, Zhan Yu overheard this and approached Beixing, sarcastically saying that if she thought belittling him would grab his attention, she was mistaken. He added that even if she were the last girl on Earth, he would never like her. After saying this, he returned to his seat. In response, Beixing mockingly agreed, saying that she had no interest in him either. Zhan Yu retorted that she must have found a new target. Tanji, curious, asked if Beixing really liked someone else. To avoid further discussion, Beixing lied, saying that she did and that it was the school topper. Tangi, surprised, asked if it was Wen Sen and insisted that Beixing introduce her to him at the festival. Left with no choice, Beixing reluctantly agreed. On the day of the festival, Beixing regretted lying. Just then, she spotted Wen Sen and quickly approached him, asking what he was doing there. He replied that he had simply come to see the festival. Beixing then requested him to stay with her. Meanwhile, Tanji, who had arrived with Zhan Yu, saw them together and greeted them. She asked Wen Sen if they actually knew each other. Beixing confirmed that they knew each other well. Later, Beixing and Wen Sen were shopping together, while Zhan Yu bought snacks for Tanji. However, Tanji refused, explaining that she was on a diet. Zhan Yu teasingly remarked that, while you took great care of yourself, others kept gaining weight without realizing it. Beixing immediately understood that he was referring to her. When Tangi saw the water activity, she excitedly suggested they try it. Zhan Yu agreed and joined her. Meanwhile, Wen Sen brought water balloons for Beixing, but instead of using them for the activity, she threw one at Zhan Yu and laughed. Zhan Yu, irritated, asked why she was targeting him instead of the opposing team, but she ignored him. Eventually, one of the balloons caused Zhan Yu to slip and fall into the water, making everyone laugh at him. Furious, Zhan Yu shouted at Beixing. He demanded to know why she always embarrassed him in front of everyone, and why she couldn't just leave his life. Beixing stood silently, remembering that Zhan Yu had said something similar in the past, when she had asked him to walk with her on stage. At that time, he had said he would feel embarrassed to be with her. Even when she was trying to console him, he had once again said that being with her was humiliating. Feeling deeply hurt, Beixing walked away, sat alone, and became lost in her thoughts. Wen Sen approached her and asked if she was okay. Beixing replied that she was fine and told him not to worry about her, suggesting that he should go and enjoy himself. However, Wen Sen insisted that they go on the big Ferris wheel together. While on the ride, Beixing sadly remarked that perhaps she was so annoying that no one could ever like her. Wen Sen considered telling her that she was not annoying at all, but he chose to remain silent. Curious, Beixing asked Wen Sen if he would go back in time to fix the problems in his present life if given a chance. After thinking for a while, Wen Sen refused. He was mostly concerned about Beixing, who seemed deeply sad. The next day at school, when everyone was gathering for a group photo, Beixing approached Wen Sen and took a selfie with him, mentioning that they didn't have any pictures together. Before leaving, she once again advised him to stay away from the lighthouse and not even take that route. Wen Sen agreed, but remained puzzled as to why she kept warning him about it every time. On entrance exam day, once again Beixing successfully completed her test. She remembered all the answers well this time too. After returning home, she kept checking her phone, prompting her mom to scold her, telling her to have dinner first before using her mobile. Her mother also worried about her brother, wondering why he was changing so much. Beixing reassured her mom that in the future, her brother would turn out to be a great person. Suddenly, she received messages about the lighthouse incident again, when Sen had died once more. Shocked and devastated, she returned to the present, confused about how his death had happened again despite her warnings. She tried time traveling again, but no matter how many times she deleted the messages, she could not go back. That night, Beixing met the mysterious man again on the seaside and confided in him about her ability to time travel to another world, her past. However, no matter what she did, she could not change anything related to someone's death. The old man advised her that there would be confusion initially, but once she traveled at the right time, she would be able to change everything. When Beixing asked if he knew when that right time would be, he told her that he could not possibly know her secrets or problems. Then he left. Beixing soon received a call from her boss, who angrily reprimanded her for not completing a file that was due for submission that day. As a result, she was fired. Though she felt terrible, she still thanked him for everything else before leaving. Next, her mother called. Beixing hurried to the location where Zhan Yu was supposed to arrive with his girlfriend. Before Zhan Yu arrived, Tanji appeared. Seeing her, Beixing felt relieved and apologized for hiding her breakup, assuming Tanji had learned about it from the group chat. Tangyi, in turn, said she also had something to tell Beixing. However, before she could speak, Zhan Yu arrived and was surprised to see Beixing there. When he asked why she had come, she said she wanted to see his new girlfriend. Smirking, Zhan Yu told her to take a good look. His new girlfriend was none other than Tanji. Hearing this, Beixing was utterly shocked. She could not believe that both the most important people in her life had betrayed her. Holding back her emotions, she congratulated them and left in anger. Tanji, however, remained unaffected, dismissing Beixing's reaction as crazy. Later, Beixing was with her mother for the wedding dress trial, trying to tell her she could not get married, but her mother kept ignoring her until she finally shouted that Zhan Yu had broken up with her. Her mother was left in shock. Beixing walked out onto the road, crying as she thought about how everything in her life was going wrong. Eventually, she entered a cafe and started drinking multiple cups of coffee. Just then, Zhan Yu arrived. He was initially shocked to see her in a wedding dress, but quickly explained that she shouldn't misunderstand him. He had been sent by her mother to bring her back home. He suggested that they clear everything up in front of her parents, but Beixing refused. She firmly stated that she didn't want to talk to him in front of them and that he shouldn't get the wrong idea. She wasn't doing any of this to get his attention, she just needed some time alone. At that moment, Beixing's brother arrived. The moment he saw Zhan Yu, he became furious and tried to attack him, demanding to know how he had the audacity to hurt his sister. However, Beixing intervened, stopping her brother and urging Zhan Yu to leave. Later, Beixing was at home, receiving apology messages from Tanji. Soon after, Tanni sent her an old video of the two of them together. While watching it, Beixing noticed Wen Sen in the background. Someone was brutally beating him. This was the same red-haired person Wen Sen had been running away from in the past. A suspicion crept into Beixing's mind. What if this person had actually killed Wen Sen, and people had only assumed it was a suicide? As she sat lost in thought, her parents approached her, asking why she hadn't come out for dinner. They also wanted to know what had happened between her and Zhan Yu that led to their breakup. However, Beixing herself didn't know why he had suddenly left her, so she had no answer for them. Her father, angered by the situation, decided to confront Zhan Yu, vowing to teach him a lesson for hurting his daughter. The rest of the family tried to stop him, reasoning that acting in anger wouldn't help. Beixing, too, pleaded with her father not to go, realizing that there was no point in discussing anything when Zhan Yu no longer loved her. In a moment of desperation and all the chaos in the family, Beixing made a rash decision: to time travel once again. She deleted a message, and in an instant she was back in the past. This time, however, she didn't arrive just a few days before the college entrance exam. She had gone all the way back to the start of the semester. Realizing that she now had plenty of time to change her past, she felt a surge of happiness. Just then, she saw Wen Sen and immediately called him over to talk. Out of nowhere, she kicked him on the leg and, under the pretense of taking him to the medical room, dragged him away with her. Now, inside the medical room, Beixing directly asked Wen Sen about the reason for his death. She wanted to know if he had any enemies, or if he had any idea about what was going to happen to him. Wen Sen was utterly confused and thought, has this girl gone crazy? He couldn't understand why she was talking as if he were already dead. He insisted that he had no reason to die. At that moment, Beixing realized that there was still a lot of time before the lighthouse incident. She assured him not to worry, promising that she wouldn't let anything happen to him this time. She even vowed to protect him properly. Perplexed by her words, Wen Sen thought she was definitely a crazy woman and tried to leave, but she grabbed his ear and held him, warning that it wouldn't be good if he sent her back to the present. Just then, Wen Sen's classmates entered the room. They assumed that Beixing was bullying their quiet, studious school topper and quickly took him away. Beixing told them that she wasn't trying to bully Wen Sen, she was trying to save him. She was determined to change her future, this time, no matter what it took. Later, Beixing was waiting for Wen Sen outside the library. When Wen Sen arrived, she started forcing him to take some snacks, insisting that whether he believed it or not, he truly needed her protection. Wen Sen questioned why, insisting that he was perfectly fine, because of course, nothing says fine like a completely confused expression in a growing audience. Just then, his classmates arrived. Before Wen Sen could even blink, his well-meaning classmates whisked him away like he was some fragile treasure, leaving Beixing standing there, thoroughly unimpressed. Watching them go, she made a grand declaration. She needed to keep an eye on Wen Sen at all times. Determined, she marched straight to Wen-sen's class teacher, leading with the oldest trick in the book, flattery. She praised him as an excellent teacher, even going as far as to predict that he would become the vice principal in the future. Flattered and now mildly suspicious, the teacher listened as Beixing smoothly transitioned to her actual request. She wanted to transfer from Class B to Class A. Despite her expert-level flattery, the teacher shook his head. "Not possible," he said. Beixing sighed, but now it's time for Plan B, if only she had one. Meanwhile, Beixing's own class teacher, Min, had overheard everything. He scolded her and took her away. They arrived at an office where, coincidentally, Wen-sen was already present for some other work. Teacher Min then told Beixing that if she truly wanted to transfer to Class A, she would have to rank within the top 50 in the upcoming exams. No one could change their class otherwise. Shocked, Beixing realized that she would have to study seriously to achieve her goal. Back in her classroom, Beixing was with her deskmate Chao, who noticed her unusual behavior. He remarked that she was acting differently. Normally, she only focused on watching over Zhan Yu, but today, she hadn't even looked at him. He then asked if she really wanted to transfer to Class A. Beixing admitted she did, but looking at the mountain of books she had to study, she felt discouraged. Just then, Zhan Yu, who had overheard their conversation again, taunted her. He said that no matter how hard she tried, she wouldn't make it into Class A. That class was reserved for intelligent students, not for a foolish monkey. Hearing this, Beixing rolled her eyes, and then Tanji rushed over to her and asked if she truly wanted to transfer. Tanji was worried about what would happen to their friendship if Beixing left, as they were best friends. However, Beixing gave her a cold look because she knew what Tanji will do in future under the guise of friendship. Beixing avoided talking to her properly and resolved to stay away from her as much as possible. Now, every day, Beixing had started following Wen-sen. She frequently forced him to take snacks, and if he refused, she would scold him. When school ended, she insisted on accompanying him home, despite Wen-sen saying he could go alone. The next day, Beixing entered Class A's classroom, bringing various food items for the students. She cheerfully announced that she would soon be their classmate and that the snacks were from her as a gesture of goodwill. Then she approached Wen-sen with an ice cream and pleaded with him to help her study, explaining that she needed to rank in the top 50 to transfer into his class. However, Wen-sen hesitated and made excuses, saying that Class B was good too. Wen-sen asked, "Then why do you want to come to this class?" But Beixing refused to explain further, as she had already told Wen-sen multiple times that she was transferring to Class A to protect him. Wen-sen just couldn't understand her reasoning. After school, Beixing forcefully took Wen-sen to a lighthouse. She believed that if she made him remember things related to his death, he might regain some of his memories. She asked him to close his eyes and try to recall anything, but Wen-sen said he couldn't remember a thing. When he tried to slip away unnoticed, Beixing caught him. However, this led to Wen-sen accidentally losing his balance and almost falling. Just in time, Beixing grabbed him and saved him. The experience left Wen-sen terrified, as he had nearly fallen. Feeling guilty, Beixing kept apologizing non-stop. Later, Beixing sat alone, looking upset. Chao asked if she was worried about the exam, reminding her that she had to rank in the top 50 no matter what. He then mentioned that the monthly exam papers had already been printed and were in the teacher's office. Beixing immediately asked, "Are you suggesting that I steal them?" Chao initially denied it, but then nodded, saying that at this point, it was the only way. However, Beixing refused, stating that cheating wasn't right. Instead, she decided it would be better to ask Wen-sen for help. Meanwhile, Wen-sen was walking away when Beixing tried to stop him. But he didn't listen. He had spotted someone and hurried off. He was shouting and asking about Wen-sen, making Beixing shocked and confused to see him. The next day, Beixing was searching for something in her house, muttering to herself, "Where did it go? I kept it right here." Finally, she found what she was looking for, a red-haired wig. At school, students were arriving as usual, but Beixing stood there wearing the red wig, waiting for Wen-sen. Seeing her, other students started whispering about her strange behavior. Frustrated, Beixing scolded them and told them to mind their own business. Meanwhile, Gagi had also arrived at school, but a group of girls approached her ready to start a fight. Gagi was known for frequently getting into fights at school. When Beixing saw this from above, she came down and asked why they were fighting. Gagi coldly replied, "Mind your own business," and continued fighting alone. As she walked away, she glanced at Beixing and commented, "You're really weird." Beixing was left stunned by Gagi's attitude. Later, Chao called out to Beixing and took her to a secluded spot, revealing that it was his secret place. He even made tea for her as a guest. Beixing admitted that the place was really cool, but when the class bell rang, they both ran off quickly. Meanwhile, Wen Sen was also late, but since he was the school's top student, the teacher let him go without saying anything. However, he stopped Chao and Beixing, punishing them instead. She protested that this was unfair, but Teacher Ming ignored her complaints. After dismissal from class, Tangji once again brought up the never-ending Zhan Yu topic, asking Beixing why she had stopped inquiring about him. Beixing, who had apparently mastered the art of selective hearing, chose to ignore her completely and walked away without a word. Outside, she finally spotted Wen Sen and immediately stopped him, dramatically holding up a red wig like it was a piece of crucial evidence in a crime drama. She asked if it reminded him of anything. Wen Sen, who was clearly not in the mood for guessing games, simply shook his head and denied any connection. Not ready to give up, Beixing insisted he dig deeper into his memory. Perhaps a recent fight? Or a threat? A dramatic showdown in a dark alley? Wen Sen, after giving it a whole 2 seconds of thought, casually replied that nothing of the sort had happened. This left Beixing momentarily speechless, which was quite a rare phenomenon. With a sigh of defeat, she finally patted his head and muttered that he was just too innocent for his own good and should go home. Unbeknownst to them, Zhan Yu had been watching the entire interaction like a disgruntled main character who just realized he was being replaced. His friend, always ready to stir the pot, pointed out that Beixing used to be glued to him, but now she was running after Wen Sen instead. This observation did not sit well with Zhan Yu, who responded with a glare so intense that his friend instantly regretted opening his mouth. Zhan Yu was starting to feel a little jealous seeing those two together. Meanwhile, at the bus stop, Beixing was busy convincing Wen Sen to help her with her studies, when she suddenly noticed the same gangster again. Thinking quickly, she shoved Wen Sen onto the bus and marched up to the gangster herself. She wanted to know who he was and why he was after Wen Sen. The gangster, instead of answering, found it hilarious that this girl was actually confronting him. He even made a little show of mocking her courage before trying to scare her away. When that didn't work, he put on his best villainous smirk and informed her that Wen Sen couldn't hide forever. He would find him soon and make sure he learned his lesson. Beixing, never one to back down, casually mentioned that Wen Sen had already left, so all his searching would be for nothing. This, as expected, did not sit well with the gangster, who instantly started fuming over how Wen Sen had managed to slip away from him yet again. The next day, the gangster had stationed himself outside the school like it was his personal lounge, making all the girls uneasy. Even Gagi, who spotted him from afar, looked concerned. Chao, who was with Beixing at the time, took this opportunity to offer some practical advice. He pointed out that if she was going to keep picking fights with gangsters, she should at least learn how to throw a decent punch. Who knew when that might come in handy? He even offered to teach her. Beixing, realizing the logic in this, agreed. At the same time, Gagi's friend approached her, equally confused about why this random gangster was hanging around their school. Gagi, for reasons best known to herself, chose not to respond. Before she could be questioned further, Teacher Min started walking in their direction. The moment Gagi heard someone mention her father was nearby, she decided that was her cue to disappear. Naturally, the gangster, perhaps inspired by her exit, also left the scene. Teacher Min saw all this unfold, but before he could stop his daughter, Beixing and Chao unintentionally blocked his way. This resulted in both of them getting a solid scolding. Beixing tried to explain that they were only practicing, but Teacher Ming wasn't interested in excuses and sentenced them to a round of running punishment. While Beixing was serving her time, Wen Sen showed up with a bottle of water, clearly concerned about her. Beixing, sensing an opportunity, teased him about finally caring for her, which surely meant he was ready to help with her studies. Wen Sen, caught off guard, insisted he never said that, but then added that he might help a little. That was all Beixing needed to hear to celebrate her small victory. Later, as she was walking with Chao after school, he casually mentioned that Gagi, Teacher Ming's daughter, wasn't exactly a fan of her father. Also, as it turned out, Wen Sen was Gagi's neighbor, which meant they had been childhood friends. Beixing noticed the same gangster who had been looking for Wen Sen earlier. She quickly told Chao to leave and marched straight to confront the guy. If he wanted to fight Wen Sen, he'd have to go through her first. That was the rule now. The guy, completely unimpressed, scolded her for interfering where she wasn't needed. Then, since she was so eager to help, he gave her a message for Wen Sen. Meet him at his repair shop that night or face the consequences. With that, he walked off, clearly expecting her to deliver the message. Beixing, however, had other plans. Instead of telling Wen Sen, she decided to show up at the repair shop herself. There, she saw the guy with his friends, looking like they were up to no good. Then, all of a sudden, they received a call and hurried off somewhere. Beixing, unable to resist, followed them, only to discover that they were causing chaos at some location, demanding money and breaking things. Later, the same guy went to a bar and drank way too much. Beixing watched all this unfold, realizing just how dangerous he really was. The next day at school, she told Chao everything, explaining how she had somehow ended up in an experiment competition with this gangster. Chao, understandably confused, asked what kind of experiment she was talking about. That's when Beixing explained the previous day how the guy had challenged Wen Sen to an elephant toothpaste experiment, but she had stepped in and decided to take Wen Sen's place. If she won, the gangster would leave Wen Sen alone. The only problem was that she had no idea how to actually do the experiment. Luckily, she remembered seeing Wen Sen do it before, which meant there was a chance he could teach her. Chao, however, pointed out the obvious. Wen Sen wasn't exactly going to agree to help that easily. Beixing groaned, realizing how hard she had worked just to get him to agree to study with her. But Chao assured her he had the perfect plan, one so good that Wen Sen wouldn't be able to refuse, no matter what. After that, Beixing was sneakily tucking a romantic novel under Wen Sen's desk, glancing at him, and musing about how incredibly handsome he was. Unfortunately for her, Wen Sen chose that exact moment to wake up and demand what she was doing there. Without missing a beat, he handed her a paper to solve, hoping to be of some help for the upcoming exam. But Beixing announced that she was far more interested in learning the elephant toothpaste experiment from him. Wen Sen pointed out that they would need a lab for that, which was currently off limits to students. Beixing, however, was more interested in his reading choices. She dramatically pulled out the same novel and teased him about it, leaving Wen Sen in a mild state of horror as he scrambled to explain that the book wasn't his. Seeing that she was about to expose him to the world, he made a split-second decision. It was better to risk breaking school rules than his reputation. And just like that, he agreed to teach her the experiment. Later that night, the two found themselves sneaking into the lab. Wen Sen patiently demonstrated the experiment step by step, and after what felt like an eternity, the elephant toothpaste was finally ready. Beixing, in her excitement, took an ill-timed step backward, directly into Wen Sen's personal space. Suddenly, his heart was doing a drum solo because, unbeknownst to her, he secretly liked her. Unfortunately, this sweet moment was cut short when the security guard decided to make a surprise appearance, following the noise. The two, now seasoned fugitives, ran for their lives. The next day, Beixing arrived at a secret location for a competition in Wen Sen's place. This did not go unnoticed by Gagi, who was there, and she wasted no time in questioning why Beixing was helping Wen Sen. What was he to her anyway? Beixing, unfazed, declared that she was his friend and therefore his protector. The gangster entered the scene and the competition began. Both contestants were intensely focused on their experiments while Chao sat in class, praying for Beixing's victory. Wen Sen, meanwhile, burst into the room in full panic mode, realizing there had been a mistake with a chemical in Beixing's experiment. But before he could warn her, Chao told him that Beixing was already competing against that gangster. Wen Sen's shock was so intense that it practically echoed through the halls as he rushed off. Meanwhile, the gangster successfully completed the elephant toothpaste experiment, while Beixing's mixture refused to react, leaving her increasingly stressed. With his victory secured, he smugly announced that he had always known he could pull it off, just like them. It turned out that his name is Meiji, and due to financial struggles, he had been out of school for years, yet his knack for experiments remained strong. As Wen Sen arrived, concerned, immediately asked Beixing if she was okay. Meiji, now in full dramatic mode, turned to Wen Sen and sarcastically questioned whether he had no shame, sending a girl to compete on his behalf. Regardless, Meiji was the winner, and now he had a more pressing concern: winning over Gagi. With confidence, he asked if she would finally be friends with him. Gagi, unimpressed, rejected him outright, declaring that he was still no match for Wen Sen. As she walked away, Meiji, desperate, followed her, demanding to know why she kept turning him down despite his best efforts. Gagi, unimpressed by his persistence, gave him a challenge. If he had the guts to break the windows of the school, especially her dad's office, she might consider it. Meiji, now caught between his conscience and his crush, hesitated. Gagi, seeing his uncertainty, smirked and taunted. "What's wrong? Are you scared?" before striding away. Meanwhile, Beixing turned to Wen Sen, realization dawning on her. So this was why he had been so troubled. His so-called love rival had been giving him a hard time, all because he mistakenly believed Wen Sen had feelings for Gagi. Wen Sen said that he didn't need anyone's protection and advised Beixing to focus on her studies. Saying this, he left without waiting for a response. Later, Beixing, who was outside the class, met Zhan Yu, who asked why she hadn't been attending classes lately. Beixing replied that it was her choice and told him to mind his own business. From a distance, Wen-sen saw them talking while he was on his way to give Beixing some study material. Since everyone knew how Beixing used to follow Zanyu around, Wen-sen felt a bit down seeing them together and quietly walked away. After school, Beixing followed Wen-sen, but he ignored her. She asked if he was upset because she had competed in his place. Then, out of curiosity, she wondered aloud whether Meiji had only misunderstood or if Wen-sen actually liked Gagi. Hearing this, Wen-sen, in anger, stated that it was true. He did like Gagi because obviously he was jealous, and then stormed off, leaving Beixing standing there in shock. The following day, all the students gathered on the ground. When Gagi was talking to Wen-sen, Beixing, watching from a distance, started wondering if Gagi became Wen-sen's girlfriend, Meiji wouldn't stay quiet and might try to harm Wen-sen. She even suspected that Meiji might have been the one who pushed Wen-sen from the lighthouse. Determined to keep Gagi away from him, she decided to act. After that, Wen-sen waited in the library for Beixing, even bringing snacks for her, because he was feeling guilty that he had lied about liking Gagi. He wondered what Beixing must be thinking about him. Just as Beixing arrived, Wen-sen tried to confess that he had lied the previous day, but before he could say anything, Beixing pulled out photos of all the talented girls in school and started showing them to him, suggesting that he should date one of them instead of Gagi. Wen-sen, annoyed at the fact that Beixing was pushing him towards other girls while he actually liked her, got angry and walked away. Beixing ran after him and asked why he was so upset. She then tried to explain that Meiji was not a good person and that Wen-sen should stay away from him or else Meiji would keep troubling him. She even suggested that they pretend to be in a relationship so that Meiji would stop bullying him. Wen-sen, hearing this, felt a bit happy, thinking that even if it was just for show, at least Beixing was calling herself his girlfriend. Agreeing to the plan, he showed her the snacks he had brought. Beixing took them without hesitation, saying she would keep them now, and walked away, leaving Wen-sen smiling at her. The next day, Gagi wasn't feeling well and was checking her fever, but her father, Teacher Ming, paid no attention to her and instead told her to hurry up or she would be late for school. Hurt by her father's indifference, Gagi watched as he left while talking to someone on the phone. Meanwhile, Wen-sen was waiting for Beixing with dumplings so they could go to school together. When Teacher Ming saw him, he asked why Wen-sen wasn't heading to school yet. Wen-sen casually replied that he was waiting for someone. As he stood there, watching other boys passing by, he tried to style himself like them, hoping to impress Beixing. After waiting for a long time, when Beixing finally arrived, Wen-sen became extremely happy and eagerly offered her the dumplings. Beixing thanked him, but then, to Wen-sen's frustration, introduced him to another girl. She was still trying to push him towards someone else, hoping he would forget Gagi. Wen-sen, irritated by her constant matchmaking, got annoyed and left in anger. Later, Beixing approached Wen-sen to apologize and asked if he was still upset with her. Before Wen-sen could respond, a group of girls arrived, wanting to befriend him. Wen-sen, realizing that Beixing had called them too, became even more annoyed. Frustrated, he told Beixing that if she didn't want to study, she shouldn't ask him to tutor her again, and with that, he left. But that night, after finishing his work, Wen-sen started preparing a study plan for Beixing, still worried about her. At the same time, he felt guilty for speaking rudely to her. The next day, the students from Class A were in trouble because someone had broken their classroom windows. Everyone suspected Chao because a student had seen him outside the school the previous night. Even though Chao denied it, no one believed him. Beixing, however, stood up for him and argued that they couldn't accuse someone without proof. Just then, Wen-sen arrived, and Beixing asked him to confirm that Chao wasn't the kind of person to do such a thing. Wen-sen, however, replied that his words wouldn't be enough to prove the truth. One of the students then asked how they were supposed to study in a classroom full of broken glass. Beixing suggested that they exchange classrooms with her class until the matter was resolved, but on the condition that no one would blame Chao without proper investigation. The students agreed, but Beixing was annoyed at Wen-sen for not supporting her. Later, Beixing tried to convince her own classmates to agree to the class exchange, but they refused. Chao told her to drop the matter, but she insisted that if any of them had been falsely accused, she would have stood by them too because they were all classmates and should support each other. Her words convinced Zanyu first, and one by one, the other students also agreed. However, Tanji seemed displeased by how everyone was listening to Beixing. Soon after, the students from Class B moved into Class A's classroom. So Class A students started sneaking into Class B, and as Wen-sen was leaving, Beixing told him, "If you don't help me study, that's okay. I can still secure a spot in the top 50 on my own. Wen-sen didn't respond to her. Later, when Gagi entered the classroom and saw the broken windows, she immediately figured out that Maji had done exactly what she had asked him to do. Soon after, they were taken to the teacher's wing, where the windows were broken too. Turns out, Maji only intended to break the windows of one place, but he ended up breaking Class A's windows as well. Now, as Gagi was outside, Wen-sen approached her, all detective-like, and asked if she was behind all this. She, of course, denied it, but while fixing something for Wen-sen during their chat, Teacher Ming happened to spot them. And he got the wrong idea. Assuming something was brewing between the two, he just walked up to them, threw a broken piece of glass near them, and left dramatically. Wen-sen noticed that the stone used to break the window had car repair oil on it. Meanwhile, Gagi was visiting her father, who, in classic dad fashion, started lecturing her. Don't distract Wen-sen from his studies. He's a brilliant student. If his grades drop, I won't forgive you. Gagi, confused, failed to grasp that her father was basically telling her not to drag Wen-sen into a love story and mess up his studies. Wen-sen, now playing the role of a moral guide, confronted Meiji at night and told him to come clean to the teacher. Meiji, instead of admitting, got defensive and tried to attack him, yelling, "What proof do you have that I broke the windows? Didn't your parents teach you not to falsely accuse people?" But Wen-sen pointed out the car oil on the stones, linking them to a repair shop. He then calmly explained that if Meiji didn't confess, his friend could be suspended from school. That seemed to shut Meiji up. Turns out, Meiji really did sneak into the school and break the windows. Back in the present, Wen-sen, trying to ease the tension, told Meiji, "I saw your elephant toothpaste experiment. It was better than mine. If we had competed, you probably would have won." Then, in an unexpected move, he offered Meiji money, pleading, "Please, take this and confess your mistake at school." Right on cue, Beixing showed up and demanded, "What are you doing here?" Then she turned to Meiji and declared, "Wen-sen is mine, so you better not mess with him." Meiji, now convinced that something was indeed going on between them, returned the money and reassured Wen-sen, "Hurry, I'll tell the teacher the truth. If I made a mistake, I should be the one to fix it." As Wen-sen and Beixing walked away, she scolded him, "Next time, don't you dare go talk to Meiji alone." But then, softening a little, she admitted, "I got the study plan you sent me." Wen-sen, relieved, happily started explaining a few chapters she needed to memorize, and just like that, both of them seemed content. Especially Beixing, seeing how Wen-sen was helping Chao with his studies. Next day, Beixing and Wen-sen were studying together. Wen-sen was hesitantly trying to talk about himself and Gagi when Gagi showed up and playfully declared, "Wen-sen's free time belongs to me." Beixing, being all defensive, quickly explained, "It's not what you think. Wen-sen is just helping me study, but yes, I will protect him, so don't mind that." Wen-sen, now utterly baffled, just stared at Gagi, wondering why she was acting like she was his girlfriend. Gagi, laughing at how flustered the two were, left, satisfied with her mischief. In the class, Atanji was annoyed because rainwater was leaking in through the broken windows. Frustrated, she lashed out at Beixing, who, instead of arguing, just took her bag and switched seats with her. That simple act won over Zhan Yu, who observed that Beixing had changed a lot, probably for the better. Meanwhile, as Beixing focused on studying, Zhan couldn't stop staring at her, completely mesmerized. Due to Zhan Yu's sudden change means that the drama will now feature a love triangle. Meiji came to the teacher's office, where he was handing over money and admitting his mistake, saying that he was the one who broke the windows. The teacher is shocked and scolds him, telling him to bring his parents the next day so he can ask them how they have raised him so irresponsibly. Meiji explains that his family members are distant due to work, and no one really cares about him, and that he lives alone. Hearing this, Teacher Ming is surprised and asks him what kind of work he does. Meiji replies that he does whatever job he can find. Feeling bad for him, Teacher Ming returns his money and tells him that he will receive the same punishment as other students. He must do cleaning duties. He also hands Meiji a uniform shirt, saying that he should at least know that coming to school in dirty clothes is unacceptable. Initially, Meiji refuses to wear it, but when Teacher Ming insists, he agrees. The teacher announces to the class that it has been proven that Chao was not responsible for anything. Hearing this, Chao and Beixing feel relieved and happy. The teacher also informs them that the windows will be repaired, so the students need to move to their classroom, and they all agree. After school, Chao mentions that she also helped a lot, so he suggests inviting her to dinner with him and Zhan Yu. However, Beixing refuses, saying that she needs to study with Wen-sen in the library. As she leaves, Zhan Yu overheard their conversation. He feels bad that Beixing rejected dinner with him, but chose to study with Wen-sen instead. In the school, Meiji is cleaning while other students mock him. Frustrated, he throws off his uniform shirt. Just then, Wen-sen arrives to help him and explains that he and Gagi have been together since childhood, but there is nothing romantic between them. He asks Maji not to misunderstand their relationship. Maji falls silent and then tells Wen-sen to finish the cleaning quickly, implying that there is no longer any conflict between them. Meanwhile, in the library, Beijing is waiting for Wen-sen. Suddenly, Zhan Yu arrives and sits next to her. She asks him why he is there and suggests he sit elsewhere, but he refuses, saying that no seat belongs to anyone. Ignoring him, Beijing focuses on her studies, but Zhan Yu snatches her pencil and tells her that he has realized it wasn't so bad when she used to follow him. He suggests that she should approach him again and that if she wants to get into Class A, they should study together and aim for it. Beijing flatly refuses, saying she has no interest in following him anymore and tells him to stay away from her. As she leaves, Zhan Yu follows her. Meanwhile, Wen-sen is talking to Gagi and asks for her help in convincing Beijing that there is nothing between them. Just then, they notice Zhan Yu persistently following Beijing, annoying her. Wen-sen dislikes seeing this, and Gagi advises him that if he truly wants Beijing, he should confess his feelings to her as soon as possible. Hearing this, Wen-sen starts thinking deeply about it. The next day, Wen-sen is waiting for Beijing. When she arrives, they prepare to go to the library to study together. However, Zhan Yu also appears and declares that he wants to study with them as well. He asks Wen-sen to help him with his studies. Beijing sarcastically questions Zhan Yu's confidence in assuming Wen-sen would easily agree, considering how much effort it took her to convince him. Surprisingly, Wen-sen agrees to help Zhan Yu, leaving Beijing shocked. As the bus arrives, Zhan Yu quickly follows Beijing to prevent Wen-sen from getting close to her. Later in the library, Zhan Yu keeps disturbing Beijing, offering to help her study. Wen-sen, visibly annoyed, tells Beijing to switch seats and sit next to him. She complies, sitting beside Wen-sen while Zhan Yu watches. Wen-sen assigned both Zhan Yu and Beijing some math problems to solve. While Zhan Yu struggled to even begin, Beijing solved them effortlessly. This left Zhan Yu in shock, as he wondered when she had become so good at studying. He even suspected that her problems might have been easier than his. However, his doubts vanished when Beijing solved his problems as well, surprising him even more. Wen-sen then explained smugly that he had created a study plan for Beijing, which had helped her remember everything, including all the formulas. Zhan Yu, feeling annoyed, admitted that while Wen-sen might be better at studying, there was no way anyone could surpass him in basketball. Without giving Wen-sen a choice, he dragged him outside for a basketball match. Beijing, still busy packing, stayed behind. Outside, Zhan Yu realized there was no basketball court nearby. Quickly changing plans, he suggested cycling instead. Wen-sen, uninterested, expressed a preference for going back inside to help Beijing study. As he turned to leave, Zhan Yu reminded him that he had been in Beijing's life before Wen-sen and believed he had the right to be closer to her. Wen-sen stopped and questioned how Zhan Yu was so sure that he was the first person in Beijing's life. Zhan Yu, unable to answer immediately, decided to change the subject and suggested they start cycling. Wen-sen confidently agreed, but as soon as he sat on the bicycle, he lost balance and fell. At that moment, Beijing arrived and rushed toward him with concern. Seeing her worried expression, Wen-sen exaggerated his injuries, groaning dramatically. Zhan Yu, unimpressed, remarked that Wen-sen was clearly putting on an act after seeing a girl. Beijing, ignoring him, scolded Zhan Yu and helped Wen-sen onto the bicycle, taking him away while Zhan Yu stood there in disbelief. As they rode together, Beijing admired the pleasant weather and remarked that if Wen-sen hadn't been injured, they could have taken a walk instead. Wen-sen eagerly suggested that they still could, but Beijing refused. Despite her rejection, Wen-sen was content simply enjoying the bicycle ride with her. Later, at Wen-sen's house, Beijing was surprised by the sheer number of books and wondered if he actually read all of them. Wen-sen clarified that many belonged to his parents, who lived in Africa due to their business, while he lived alone. Beijing, taken aback, remained silent for a moment. As she applied medicine to his injured leg, Wen-sen finally confessed that there was nothing between him and Gagi, explaining that she was just a good friend. Beijing, unfazed, simply acknowledged his statement and moved on. She then noticed an old photo of Wen-sen and asked if he had once enjoyed playing basketball. She mentioned that Zhan Yu had always been passionate about basketball and that she had started liking it because of him. Recalling the day she first noticed Zhan Yu, she explained that he had been playing basketball at the time. Wen-sen hesitated before asking if she had liked Zhan Yu just because he was a good basketball player. Beixing denied this and revealed that she had liked him because he had saved her life years ago and had even injured his hand in the process. Wen-sen, upon hearing this, became quiet, seemingly lost in thought. It appeared as if he knew something, or perhaps Beixing was mistaken about the past. However, she soon dismissed her own memories as old events, stating that she no longer had feelings for Zanyu. She then went to the kitchen to cook while Wen-sen remained seated processing her words. A moment later, he realized that Beixing had moved on from Zanyu, and his mood instantly lifted. While she prepared the meal, he absent-mindedly picked up his old photo. Recalling a memory from their childhood, he remembered that he had always liked Beixing and had once planned to give her a friendship band and a letter. However, just as he had gathered the courage to hand them to her, she had turned away to ask someone for directions to the restroom. His moment had been lost, and since then, he had kept his feelings hidden. Later, Beixing opened the fridge and found it nearly empty. She was surprised and asked if Wen-sen even ate at home. Wen-sen explained that he usually ate out, prompting Beixing to casually mention that she would cook for him next time. Wen-sen, hearing this, was unable to hide his excitement at the thought of spending more time with her. When she was coming back after seeing her off, he spotted Meiji, who was struggling to buy a can of drink. Wen-sen helped him, demonstrating the correct way to use the machine. Meiji, impressed, remarked that Wen-sen was admired by teachers and girls alike. Wen-sen, however, responded that he found Meiji cool for being open about his feelings. Meiji, curious, asked whether the girl who always argued with him was Wen-sen's girlfriend. Wen-sen denied it and explained that Beixing only wanted to get into his class, so he was helping her study. Meiji then pointed out that if she was trying so hard to be in his class, perhaps it was because of him. Wen-sen hesitated, unsure of how to respond. Meiji, taking matters into his own hands, suggested they ask Beixing directly. When Wen-sen and Meiji arrived at Beixing's place, she was studying. Upon seeing Wen-sen outside, she immediately brightened up and rushed downstairs to meet him. However, her expression changed when she noticed Meiji and questioned why he was there. Ignoring her question, Meiji directly asked if she wanted to be in Wen-sen's class because of Wen-sen. Beixing, without hesitation, confirmed that she did. She explained that she wanted to be able to protect Wen-sen at all times and keep him safe from people like Meiji. Satisfied with the answer, Meiji turned to Wen-sen and remarked that they had finally gotten the confirmation they needed. He then left, leaving Wen-sen standing there, flustered and embarrassed. As time passed, Wen-sen and Beixing continued studying together every day. Beixing became well prepared for the upcoming monthly exam. When the exam day arrived, she took the test with full focus. Later, as the results were about to be announced, she eagerly searched for her name among the top 50 students. Beixing was searching for her name in the top giftee list, and she finally found it. She became extremely happy, thinking that she had finally made it into Class A. Wen-sen, who as always had secured the first position, congratulated Beixing. However, since his teacher was calling him, he left the place. Meanwhile, Zanyu approached Beixing to congratulate her as well and offered her ice cream, saying that someone had given it to him, but he wanted to give it to her. Beixing then asked him if he felt insulted because she no longer followed him. She told him to forget any hope that she would like him again, as that was now impossible. Saying this, she walked away, leaving Zanyu standing there, watching her go. Now Wen-sen's teacher introduced Beixing to his class, announcing that from now on she would be their classmate. Seeing Beixing, Wen-sen became happy. However, when the teacher assigned Beixing the last seat since it was the only one available, she felt disappointed because she wanted to sit with Wen-sen. Just then, Gagi stood up and moved to the back, allowing Beixing to sit next to Wen-sen. Excited, Beixing quickly took the seat beside Wen-sen and felt extremely happy. That night, Gagi, Wen-sen, Chao, and Beixing went out to celebrate Beixing's success. However, when Meiji arrived, Chao became nervous, and Beixing was also surprised to see him. She asked why he was there, to which Meiji responded, asking if he was not allowed to be there. Later, Meiji was seen talking to Gagi. In reality, Gagi had invited Meiji there. As they conversed, Chao suggested going to the beach for fireworks. However, Gagi declined, suggesting instead that they do it at the school. They all agreed and went to the school, where they began lighting fireworks. Everyone enjoyed the view, including Meiji and Chao, who seemed pleased as well. Just then, the noise attracted teacher Ming, who arrived and scolded them. Beixing, Wen-sen, and Meiji immediately ran away, but Gagi stayed behind. Chao, in his attempt to take Gagi with him, also got caught. As a result, both of them were punished. Watching from a distance, Beixing wondered why Gagi had not run away. Meiji then explained that Gagi had brought them there on purpose to trouble her father. He further revealed that she often made him trouble her father, making him believe that she liked him. However, he had now realized that she was merely using him. Maji then bid farewell to Winsen and left. Curious, Beixing asked Winsen how he had become friends with Maji. Winsen simply replied that their friendship had just happened. On the other hand, as part of their punishment, Gagi and Chao had to run. When Gagi asked Chao about his dreams, he told her that he wanted to become a master comedian. Hearing this, Gagi promised to help him one day. In the next scene, Beixing was painting a banner to cheer for Wensen as he had a basketball match against Zhan Yu the next day. She wrote, "Wensen, you are the best." Wensen thanked her but joked about her handwriting being poor. Feeling offended, Beixing stopped what she was doing, but Wensen quickly clarified that he was joking. As Beixing's face was covered in paint, Wensen, after gathering courage, attempted to clean it off. Beixing simply stared at him, as this was the first time she had felt something for him. The next day, when Beixing arrived at school, she discovered that someone had thrown away her banner, ruining it. This made her upset as she wondered who could have done it. Winsen told her that it didn't matter as she had already supported him the previous day. However, Beixing refused to let it go and went to the storeroom to make a new banner. There, she encountered Tanji, who unknowingly revealed that she was the one who had ruined the banner. Shocked, Beixing questioned her, asking if she had lost her mind. However, deciding to deal with it later, she focused on making another banner. As she searched for materials, Tanji suddenly locked her inside the storeroom and left. Meanwhile, Wensen's basketball match was about to start when he noticed Beixing cheering for him from the window. Seeing this, he felt happy, as he had been waiting for her. However, as Beixing was standing on a stool, she suddenly lost her balance and fell, leaving her hanging. Struggling to hold on, she found herself in a difficult situation. Upon seeing this, Wensen became so worried that he abandoned the match and rushed to save Beixing. Zhan Yu, witnessing this, was left stunned. Wensen reached the storeroom and helped Beixing get down safely. His actions touched Beixing deeply, triggering a past memory. She recalled being trapped in a burning place during her childhood, struggling to breathe. Just then, a boy had come to rescue her, injuring his hand in the process. However, when Beixing later regained consciousness, she saw Zhan Yu in front of her with a bandage on his hand. This led her to believe that Zhan Yu was the one who had saved her. Now, in the present, as Zhan Yu ran towards Beixing, worried about her, she directly asked him how he had injured his hand. Zhan Yu casually replied that a cat had scratched him in childhood. At that moment, Beixing realized that Zhan Yu had never saved her, and her belief had been wrong all along. Later, she asked Wensen if they had ever met before. Wensen, unable to recall, said that he didn't remember. At that time, Beixing failed to see his hand, as it was all covered. However, she now suspected that Wensen was the one who had saved her in childhood. Determined to find out the truth, she decided to investigate. Next day, the news reported that the weather would be bad for the next few days. Meanwhile, Beixing took her brother's basketball t-shirt and left despite his protests as it was his favorite. On the other hand, Wensen went to buy steam buns for Beixing. However, due to heavy rain, the restaurant owner was closing the shop. Despite Wensen's repeated requests, the owner refused to serve him. As the rain continued, Wensen helped the owner move his supplies inside. Grateful for his help, the owner eventually agreed to make the buns for him. Later, Wensen waited for Beixing with the buns in hand. When she arrived, he handed them to her. Surprised, Beixing asked how he had managed to get them. She saw that Wensen was all wet in the rain, so she took out her brother's t-shirt and handed it to Wensen, requesting him to change right there. Actually, she is doing this so she can check Wensen's arms and legs for marks. However, just then the school bell rings, and Wensen quickly makes an excuse and rushes inside. Now we see that classes for Class A and B are being held together. These are extra classes, while the rest of the school is closed due to bad weather. Everyone is sitting around complaining about why they didn't get a holiday. Beixing writes a note for Wensen, which Chao was about to throw toward him, but just then, Zhan Yu changes its direction and it lands directly on Teacher Ming's back. Teacher Ming picks it up and reads it aloud. Brushing had written, "Sorry for forcing you to change your t-shirt in front of me." Hearing this, all the students burst into laughter. The teacher angrily asks, "Who is this ill-mannered person who wrote such nonsense?" Left with no choice, Beixing has to stand up. Wensen starts getting nervous. The teacher then demands that the person for whom the note was written should also stand up. Before Wensen can react, Chao, Gagi, and Zhan Yu all stand up together to protect Beixing. The teacher mocks them, saying, "Look at these troublemakers and their gang." The teacher then tells Beixing, "3 people stood up for you. So now you will have to submit 3 chemistry papers. This makes Beixing extremely anxious, as the support from her friends has landed her in more trouble. While Beixing's brother, Len, is surrounded by a group of people demanding their money back. It turns out Len had sold them hair color from a bad brand, which caused them problems. Len tries to convince them that it wasn't his fault and that he had bought a good product. Just then, Meiji arrives and says, "Gao sent us to collect the money, with interest." As Meiji inspects Len's products, Len points at him and says, "This is the person who sold me the bad cream. Ask him for your money instead." Taking advantage of the distraction, Len runs away, leaving Maji trapped by the angry crowd demanding their money. Back at home, Len is sitting comfortably in some weird clothes when Beixing asks, "What are you wearing?" Len replies, "This is my new raincoat, which I plan to sell." "Isn't it cool?" Beixing scoffs, "Only a fool would buy this," and leaves. The next day, Len is seen outside Beixing's school trying to sell the raincoats. He grabs Wen-sen and pleads, "Please buy this raincoat. I'm very poor. My children are starving at home, waiting for me to bring food." Feeling sorry for him, Wen-sen buys the raincoat. However, when Wen-sen enters the school wearing it, Maji's friends notice and say, "That's Len. We saw him wearing this raincoat in the morning." Mistaking Wen-sen for Len, they attack him mercilessly, leaving him in a terrible state. Later, when Maji realizes that the person they beat up was actually Wen-sen, he is utterly shocked. In the classroom, the teacher announces that due to worsening weather conditions, extra classes are canceled. The students cheer in excitement. However, Beixing soon learns from Chao that Wen-sen is in the medical room after being badly beaten up. Worried, she rushes there and sees him wearing her brother's raincoat. She immediately apologizes, realizing that Len must have sold it to him. She offers to return his money, but Wen-sen refuses, saying, "I actually found this raincoat cute, so I bought it." He also decides not to tell her that Meiji was behind the attack, knowing that if she found out, she would start seeing Meiji in an even worse light. Beijing once again hands Wen-sen some clothes and insists that he change immediately. She is still trying to check for any injuries on his arms. When Wen-sen refuses, she steps aside, allowing him to change. At night, Maji is confronted by another gang that stops him in his tracks. He had previously fought one of them, and now they are out for revenge. Just as they are about to attack, Wen-sen intervenes, trying to defuse the situation. However, the gang warns him to stay out of it. Instead of backing off, Wen-sen throws his belongings at them and quickly drags Maggie away. The two run as fast as they can, but eventually get cornered. The gang thinks they have them trapped, but suddenly, Wen-sen and Maggie start throwing water at them, causing them to flee. Grateful, Maggie thanks Wen-sen, who advises him, "You shouldn't live like this." Maji sighs and replies, "I have no other choice." Wen-sen had always felt that no one in the world truly cared for him. Maji, upon hearing this, was taken aback when Wen-sen told him that if he wished, he could visit his home occasionally, since he considered Maji his friend. The unexpected kindness made Maji emotional. He found it hard to believe that someone as good as Wen-sen was willing to befriend him. The following day, Wen-sen was tutoring Beixing at his home. However, Beixing's attention remained fixed on Wen-sen's shoulder. As they began reading a topic related to shoulders, she persistently insisted on seeing his shoulder, despite Wen-sen's reluctance. He refused multiple times, unable to understand the reason behind her insistence. Suddenly, she lost her balance and fell onto him, bringing them uncomfortably close. As they locked eyes, their heartbeats accelerated noticeably. Their moment of unexpected closeness was interrupted by the sound of the doorbell. When Wen-sen opened the door, he found his teacher standing there with his daughter Gagi. The teacher had come to tutor Wen-sen, but was surprised to see Beixing there. He questioned her presence, to which Beixing explained that he himself had given her 3 chemistry papers to solve, and she had come to seek Wen-sen's help. The teacher then proceeded to teach the 3 students together. However, in the middle of the session, he received a call informing him that the school's statue had been damaged due to severe weather conditions. To address this, a competition would be held among the students to design a new one. Beixing, Gaji, and Wen-sen overheard the conversation. Beixing immediately recalled the design that had won a similar competition before. After the teacher left, Beixing sat down with the others and began sketching the same design, confidently asserting that it would surely be among the top 10. Wen-sen questioned how she could be so sure, but Beixing remained firm in her belief, insisting that their design would be the best. After putting in hours of effort, they finally recreated the design, just as Beixing had described, with Gagi taking the lead in drawing it. Exhausted from their hard work, they eventually fell asleep in the same place. When Beixing woke up, she noticed an opportunity to look at Wen-sen's hand more closely. To her shock, she discovered a familiar mark, one that confirmed he was the same person who had saved her life in childhood. A month later, the weather had improved and the school had reopened. As Beixing, Wensen, and Gagi arrived at school, their teacher informed them that their submitted statue design had been approved. Overjoyed by the news, the three of them celebrated enthusiastically. In her excitement, Beixing hugged Wensen, but quickly pulled away upon realizing what she had done. Embarrassed, she left the scene, leaving Wensen bewildered by her reaction. Gagi, noticing his confusion, reminded him that now that the statue was completed, he should take the opportunity to confess his feelings to Beixing. Later, Gagi visited her father's office to deliver some papers. To her delight, he mentioned that Beixing had told him about the design and that he found it impressive. Gagi was pleased to receive such praise from her father. A month passed and the completed statue was finally installed at the school. As the four friends walked together, Gagi reminded Wensen about his intention to speak to Beixing. Before he could respond, she and Chao walked away, leaving Wensen alone with Beixing. Before Wensen could initiate the conversation, he noticed that Beixing appeared distracted. Her gaze was fixed on Maji, who had dyed his hair red. The change in his appearance made him look exactly like the man from the video who had been seen attacking Wensen. A dreadful realization struck Beixing that Maji was the one destined to harm Wensen in the future. This thought sent her into a state of distress. Later, the four friends gathered to clean Chao's secret hideout, but Beixing remained preoccupied with her thoughts about Maji. In a sudden accident, a desk nearly fell on her. But Wensen acted quickly and pulled her out of harm's way. Once again, they found themselves in close proximity, and Beixing was reminded of how Wensen had saved her life during childhood. Gagi and Chao watched in silent astonishment. Sometime later, Beixing and Wensen went out to buy something. Taking the opportunity, Beixing expressed her gratitude, not only for Wensen's help that day, but also for saving her life in childhood. She revealed that she now realized he was the one who had rescued her back then. Wensen smiled and asked if she still remembered that incident from their childhood. Beixing assured him that while he might have forgotten it, she never could. She then vowed to protect him as well. Wensen, still confused, questioned why she believed something bad was going to happen to him. Beixing, determined, simply stated that she would never allow anything to happen to him and that they would always remain good friends. Upon returning, they found Chao sitting in a state of despair. Their teacher had informed them that the place where Chao held his mini-shows was soon to be converted into a parking lot, making it impossible for him to continue performing there. This news left Chao deeply saddened. Beixing tried to reassure him, telling him that in the future he would have a grand stage of his own. However, Chao remained silent. On her way home, Beixing happened to pass by Maji's repair shop. There, she was shocked to find Wensen's school shirt, still bearing his name badge and stained with blood. Panic overtook her. At that moment, Maji's friend approached and suspiciously asked what she was trying to steal. Alarmed, Beixing attempted to flee, but he grabbed her and behaved inappropriately. Before the situation could escalate, Zanyu arrived and intervened, physically confronting the man and demanding to know how he dared to lay a hand on his friend. However, more of the man's associates appeared, forcing Zanyu and Beixing to flee the scene. They ran for a long time, evading their pursuers. Finally, when they stopped to rest, Zanyu turned to Beixing and accused her of pretending not to have feelings for him, insisting that she still liked him. Beixing, wanting to clarify, explained that she had once believed he was the person who had saved her life. But now she knew it was actually Wensen. Zanyu fell silent for a moment before pointing out that he had saved her life that day as well. Beixing acknowledged his help, but told him that if he continued to stay with her, he would eventually regret it, as he did not truly love her. She assured him that, although he did not understand it at the moment, he would realize it in the future. With that, she left, leaving Zanyu feeling dejected as he began to understand that he truly did have feelings for her. The next day, while the teacher spoke, Zanyu's attention was entirely on Beixing and Wensen. Watching them together filled him with sorrow. Meanwhile, Beixing questioned Wensen about Maji. Wensen defended him, stating that Maji was a good person who had simply been burdened with life's hardships too soon. He acknowledged that Beixing did not see him as a good person, but he believed that Meiji still had the potential to become their friend. Beixing suddenly fell silent. Next day, Meiji went to talk to Lin, complaining that the red hair color Lin had given him had damaged his skin. He angrily questioned how Lin could dare to sell him a defective product. Meanwhile, Beixing arrived and overheard their conversation. Lin then warned Maji that he could report him to the police because he had witnessed Maji brutally beating up a schoolboy who had bought a raincoat from him. Beixing was shocked to realize that it was Maji who had attacked Wensen that day. The following day, Wen Sen was looking at the rabbit band he had never been able to give Beixing in their childhood. Just then, Ma Ji arrived at his place, reminding him that Wen Sen himself had invited him over. The two sat and talked, and Ma Ji noticed the rabbit band. He asked if Wen Sen wanted to give it to Beixing, and then advised him to take her on a camping trip. He suggested that Wen Sen should also invite their friends and during the trip confess his feelings to Beixing. But if he found it difficult to express his emotions directly, Meiji told him at least to ask her how she felt about him, whether she liked him or not. Wen Sen agreed to the plan. The next day, Chao was arranging another place for himself where he could practice, which made his friends happy for him. Meanwhile, Beijing noticed Wen Sen receiving a call from Meiji, which made her angry. She questioned why he was talking to Meiji so often. Later that night, Meiji was seen holding the rabbit band belonging to Wen Sen while lost in thought. At that moment, Beixing arrived and once again warned him to stay away from Wen Sen. Meiji, surprised, asked why she hated him so much. Beixing then showed him Wen Sen's shirt and asked if it was blood-stained. Meiji recalled an incident when he had accidentally spilled hair color on Wen Sen's shirt at the salon. He had taken the shirt to wash it, but Beixing, in the present moment, accused him. She said that Wen Sen is a good person who had never harmed anyone, so how could Maji possibly be his friend? Feeling deeply hurt, Maji responded bitterly, admitting that she was right. He did not deserve Wen Sen's friendship. In anger, he sarcastically confirmed that the stains on the shirt were indeed blood, because he intended to kill Wen Sen. He then told Beixing that if she had gotten her answer, she could leave. As Maji moved to leave, the rabbit band fell out of his pocket. Seeing it, Beixing recalled a moment from the future where she had learned about an incident at Wen Sen's school. A student had committed suicide by jumping from a lighthouse, and a rabbit band had been found at the scene. She suddenly realized that this meant Maji was the one who would kill Wen Sen in the future. The realization hit her hard as she connected the dots. Wen Sen's body had been discovered with the rabbit band nearby. Just then, some people arrived and began fighting Maji and his friends. The fight turned brutal as both sides attacked each other mercilessly. Beixing watched in horror as Maji punched someone, remembering how, in the video from the future, he had beaten Wen Sen in the same way. Overwhelmed, she immediately called the police. Soon, the police arrived and arrested Maji and his group, taking them away. Maji, now in custody, seemed deeply upset. The next day was New Year's Eve, but Maji could not stop thinking about Maji and Wen Sen. She felt as if she had successfully changed the future. Later, she went to her parents and they all celebrated the New Year together. Meanwhile, Gagi's father prepared noodles for her, but she refused to take them. On the other hand, Wen Sen was spending New Year's Eve alone, as he did every year. Chao's parents were also introduced, showing how much they loved him, making their family a truly happy one. The next day, Beixing and Wen Sen were going on a camping trip where they first discussed Maji. Wen Sen was still worried about him being in jail. Afterward, the two wished each other a happy new year. That night, while the four friends were together, Gagi and Chao started teasing Beixing and Wen Sen, pointing out how their outfits matched perfectly. They jokingly asked if they were secretly dating, to which both denied any such thing. Shortly after, Gagi pulled Beixing aside to talk privately. She asked Beixing what she truly thought of Wen Sen, to which Beixing replied that they were just good friends. Hearing this, Gagi called her stupid for not realizing how much Wen Sen liked her. She explained that he wouldn't have agreed to help with her studies if he didn't care for her. He never even spoke to girls otherwise. Beixing was left completely shocked by this revelation. Wen Sen was looking at a message which stated that Maji had asked the sender to return Wen Sen's rabbit band. The message also mentioned that the band had been placed near his door. As Wen Sen read the message, he glanced at the band in his hand, realizing that he had actually found it outside his door. A little later, Wen Sen was alone with Beixing. He recalled Maji's advice, where he had told him to ask Beixing whether she liked him or not. Gathering courage, Wen Sen finally asked Beixing, "Do you like me?" Hearing this, Beixing was left in shock, unable to comprehend what he had just said. Wen Sen, on the other hand, felt happy inside after asking the question. However, before Beixing could reply, Chao called them both to come and watch the fireworks, so they went to join Chao and Gagi. While everyone was happily enjoying themselves, Beixing suddenly noticed the rabbit band in Wen Sen's hand. She was completely shocked, realizing that the future had not changed yet. Overwhelmed, she immediately asked him how he had gotten it and whether it belonged to him. Wen Sen explained that it was a gift for someone who was very important to him. The next day, Beixing visited Wen Sen at his house, only to find out that he was unwell and had not gone to school. As she looked around, she noticed a form that Won-sen was trying to hide. Eventually, he revealed that he was planning to go abroad for further studies, something his parents had wanted for a long time. Hearing this, Beijing became sad, but also felt that it might be for the best. This way, nothing bad would happen to Wen-sen. Meanwhile, Chao shared some exciting news with Beijing, telling her that a big agency had offered him training. He was determined to follow his dream of becoming an actor, even if it meant skipping the college entrance exams. As they spoke, Gagi arrived and warned him not to join just any agency, insisting that he should take his entrance exams first. Chao initially refused, but then showed them his exam roll number, which was 1. Seeing this, Beijing remembered that during her entrance exams, desk number 1 had always remained empty. She also recalled how, in the future, someone had told her that Chao had become a famous actor who was constantly on world tours. Realizing this, Beijing chose to support Chao, believing in his dreams. Touched by her words, Chao became emotional and called her his best friend. Next day, Wen-sen and Beijing went to the zoo to spend time together. But while Beijing was shopping, a lady commented that her boyfriend was nice. Confused, Beijing asked who she was referring to, and the lady pointed at Wen-sen, who was standing behind her. This reminded Beijing of a mysterious old man's words, that her world was behind her. She suddenly understood that the man had been talking about Wen-sen all along. Realizing this, she felt truly happy, knowing that she was finally with someone who valued her. The two spent a wonderful day together, creating beautiful memories. At one point, as they passed by a tiger's enclosure, a loud roar frightened Beijing so much that she tightly hugged Wen-sen. To her surprise, she actually liked the way Wen-sen held her in return, making the moment even more special. Later, as they were heading home, Beijing kept glancing back at Wen-sen repeatedly, feeling happy that she had finally found her true happiness in him. The next day, Beijing met with the zoo owner to discuss her fireworks party plan. Although he appreciated her idea, he asked if she would be able to convince people to attend. Beijing confidently assured him that she would. She then explained that she was organizing the event as a surprise for her friend, who was leaving for abroad soon. Determined to make it happen, Beijing started persuading the public to join the fireworks party, but no one seemed interested. Just then, Zhang Yu arrived and offered to help. As he handed out papers, many girls eagerly took them because of his good looks, leaving Beijing completely shocked. The next day, when Beijing arrived at school, she looked exhausted. Wen-sen asked where she had been, but she didn't reveal anything. Later, Beijing resumed handing out flyers to promote her event, and once again, Zhang Yu came to support her. At that moment, Wen-sen called her, asking where she was. However, Beijing lied, saying she was at the library, unaware that Wen-sen was actually nearby and had seen her lying. When Wen-sen suddenly appeared in front of her, Beijing was left stunned. Feeling jealous after seeing her with Zhang Yu, Wen-sen accused her of lying to him because of him. He reminded her that their exams were approaching and insisted that she should come with him to study. However, Beijing refused, asking him to let her stay there just for that day. Zhang Yu also sided with Beijing, which made Wen-sen even more jealous. He then said that he had thought they were good friends, but it seemed that Zhang Yu was more important to her. Hearing this, Beijing also became upset and responded that she had only been trying to do something for him before he left, but he had misunderstood her. Hurt by his words, she angrily walked away, leaving Wen-sen standing there in shock. Later, Wen-sen deeply regretted his actions and tried to talk to Beijing, but she kept ignoring him. Noticing this, Chao decided to intervene and arranged a meeting for them, telling them that this was all he could do. Now it was up to them to resolve their misunderstandings. Finally, Wen-sen and Beijing apologized to each other, clearing up their differences, and became friends again. The next day, as they were studying again, Wen-sen noticed that Beijing was not paying much attention. He asked her if she did not want to pass with good grades. In response, Beijing assured him not to worry and confidently stated that she was going to shock everyone in the college entrance exam. During their conversation, she inquired whether he would take advantage of the situation if he knew the entrance exam questions in advance. Wen-sen replied that he would not, as one might pass once by cheating, but in life, no one could move forward without hard work. Beijing remained silent, realizing that Wen-sen's words were indeed true. Later, as they were returning home, Beijing appeared to be upset when Sin asked her the reason, to which she explained that while she was happy about him going abroad for further studies and having a better future, she did not feel like letting him go away from her. She admitted that she wanted to enjoy her college life with him, studying together. Wen-sen was surprised to see how much Beijing was disturbed by the thought of him going abroad. This made him decide that he would not go abroad but would instead complete his studies at the local university. Hearing this, Beijing was overjoyed. Wen-sen then handed her his admission form, asking her to tear it up. She gladly tore the form, but carefully preserved his photograph, saying that she would keep it with her. Wen-sen was even happier to realize how important he was to Beijing. At her home, Beijing was in her room, recalling Wen-sen's words. She then tore up all the papers containing the entrance exam questions, as she had decided to work hard alongside Wen-sen and score good marks through her efforts. The following day, during the mock test, to her surprise, all the questions that appeared were the same as those in the main entrance papers, indicating that the future had slightly changed. This confirmed that Beijing had made the right decision to rely on her own hard work rather than depending on her future answers for the main entrance exam. Since she knew all the answers, she wrote them well. When the results were announced, the entire school was shocked, as Beijing secured the first rank while Wen-sen came second. Tang Yi accused Beijing of cheating, claiming that she could never have ranked first. Beijing remained silent, but Zhan Yu stepped forward to support her and questioned Tang Yi on what authority she was making such accusations. When Beijing tried to stop the argument, Zhan Yu firmly stated that he would not allow anyone to bully her. Annoyed, Tang Yi left the scene, while Beijing also started walking away. Zhan Yu followed her and asked why her phone had been unreachable lately, as he had tried calling her multiple times but received no response. Beijing revealed that she had blocked his number. Shocked, Zhan Yu asked why she had done so, as he had thought they would date each other once they got into university. Beijing told him to stop dreaming, as that was never going to happen. When Beijing and Wen-sen arrived in class, they noticed that Gagi looked extremely worried. She took them along in a bus and during the journey revealed that Chao had been kidnapped. She explained that he had called her, asking for money, and it was evident from his voice that someone was forcing him to do so. She reminded them that Chao had been invited by an agency for acting classes. Beijing recalled this and concluded that the agency was a fraud. The three then devised a plan. Beijing and Gagi would go inside under the pretense of handing over the money, and if they did not come out within half an hour, Wen-sen would call the police. In the agency, Chao was with a man, looking terrified. At first, Gagi tried to talk calmly, but soon she stood up and confronted the man, stating that she knew they were not going to make Chao a star but were merely using him for money. As she attempted to take Chao away, several men arrived and surrounded them, preventing their escape. Prepared to fight, Gagi was ready to defend herself, but the scene cut off to reveal that she, too, had been kidnapped along with Chao. Chao, surprised, remarked that he had called her for help, but now she had also been taken hostage. Gagi apologized, but Chao expressed gratitude, saying he was happy to see that he was important to her. Gagi admitted that, of course, he was important to her. In reality, both of them had started developing feelings for each other. Since they were having a heartfelt conversation, Beijing, who was also kidnapped, remarked that they had completely ignored her. In response, Chao told Beijing that he would always remember her kindness in every lifetime. Just then, there was a commotion outside as Wen-sen arrived with the police. Chao's parents also arrived, visibly worried about him, along with their class teacher. Finally, the three of them breathed a sigh of relief. Wen-sen quickly rushed to Beijing and untied her ropes. Beijing became emotional, realizing how important and special she was to Wen-sen, as he always rescued her from trouble. The next day, the four friends were together again. Chao, however, looked quite upset because his parents had forbidden him from pursuing a career as an actor. Beijing reassured him, saying that he should not worry, as she still believed he would become a famous actor in the future, and that his family would eventually be proud of him. To lighten the mood, she showed them tickets to a fireworks festival, the event she had secretly arranged for Wen-sen for a long time. Finally, the four of them arrived at the zoo, where the fireworks display mesmerized them. They all loved the spectacle. One by one, they made their wishes. Wen-sen wished to attend university with Beijing. Meanwhile, Beijing silently wished for all her friends' dreams to come true. They were all overjoyed, enjoying the moment together. The next day, Magi was returning from prison. However, he seemed to have changed. Soon his boss Lee approached him and warned that he had no choice but to complete the assigned task. Otherwise, he would be killed. Magi did not respond and instead focused on a news broadcast on television. The college entrance exam was just 2 days away, so a group photo was being taken. While everyone was looking at the camera, Wen-sen was only looking at Beijing. After all this, Beijing was sitting sadly thinking about Meiji when Gagi arrived and started showing her art certificate, excitedly saying that she had finally been selected. Beijing congratulated Gagi, who then asked why she looked so upset. Beixing replied that it was nothing, but she was worried about Wen-sen. Gagi questioned why she was so concerned about him and then suggested that if Beixing was really that worried, she should stay at her house for the night. Since Wen-sen was her neighbor, Beixing could keep an eye on him and also help her convince her father, because she was planning to tell him about her dream that night. Beixing agreed, and Gagi called Beixing's house to inform them that she would be staying over. Gagi arrived home with Beixing and showed her father the art certificate, telling him that she wanted to become a painter. However, teacher Ming got angry and told her that she couldn't decide her future on her own. Beixing tried to support Gagi, requesting teacher Ming to support her as she was truly talented in painting. However, he refused to listen to either of them. This made Gagi furious, and she yelled at her father, saying that he had never understood her or cared about her happiness. She then stormed out of the house. Beixing found the situation strange and decided to go to Wen-sen's house to tell him everything. As Beixing was about to leave for home, Wen-sen stopped her and said that if she wanted, she could stay at his house that night. He mentioned that if she couldn't sleep, they could talk. Beixing was shocked by his words, and even Wen-sen himself felt awkward after saying them. Beixing then decided to go home but was interrupted when teacher Ming arrived, saying that Gagi was missing and asked for help in finding her. Wen-sen mentioned that Gagi's phone was switched off. Just then, Zhan Yu arrived and was surprised to see Beixing and Wen-sen together so late at night. He told Beixing to come with him, saying he would drop her home. However, Wen-sen held Beixing's hand and insisted that he would take her home instead. At that moment, someone called out Beixing's name loudly. It was her father. He took Beixing home and scolded her harshly, demanding to know what she was doing with them. He told her that if he hadn't arrived at the right time, he wouldn't even have known what she was up to. Beixing tried to explain to her father that he had misunderstood the situation and assured him that nothing was wrong. She even offered to let him speak with teacher Ming to confirm that they were only looking for Gagi. Meanwhile, Gagi was with Chao. She had chosen to meet him at such a time because she liked him. Chao explained to her that her father did not wish bad for her, and that he was only concerned about her future. Hearing this, Gagi felt a little relieved and finally agreed to return home. The next day, the teacher addressed the students, telling them that since the exam was scheduled for the following day, they could either study or rest as per their choice. Most of them decided to rest. While lying down, Wen-sen kept staring at Beixing non-stop. Finally, the day of the college entrance exam arrived. The students received their papers and focused on their exams. After finishing the test, Beixing took Wen-sen to the Ferris wheel, not wanting to leave him alone for even a moment. Wen-sen asked why they had come there, but she didn't answer out loud, thinking to herself that this place was far away from the lighthouse. Suddenly, due to some technical issue, the ride stopped. They decided to listen to a song together, the same song Beixing had heard with Wen-sen during her second time traveling. Listening to it, Beixing fell asleep. When she woke up after the rain stopped, she panicked, realizing Wen-sen was nowhere to be seen. Just then, he appeared in front of her, and out of relief, she hugged him tightly. Wen-sen was taken aback by her sudden action. In her mind, Beixing thought to herself that she had finally put an end to Wen-sen's death curse. As they left together, Beixing was visibly happy and said that they would now enjoy college life together. They started meeting every day, going out and enjoying themselves. When Beixing returned home, she looked at Wen-sen's photo and praised herself, thinking she had worked hard to save his life and had finally succeeded. Since she had now developed feelings for Wen-sen, she began wondering whether she should confess her feelings first or wait for him to do so. At the graduation party, all the students had gathered to celebrate. Teacher Ming introduced Wen-sen to a very intelligent girl, and upon seeing them talk, Beixing started feeling jealous. Meanwhile, Chao was imitating teacher Ming, making everyone laugh. As usual, Wen-sen was with Beixing, but when the girl asked him which college he planned to join, Beixing, feeling jealous, left the place and sat somewhere else. Wen-sen, however, was only discussing Beixing's major with the girl. The girl then asked Wen-sen when he would confess his feelings to his friend, to which he replied that he would do so very soon. Later, Wen-sen asked Beixing if she would go out with him over the weekend, and she agreed. Meanwhile, Gagi was burning her paintings. Chao tried to stop her, but she cried, saying her father didn't care about her happiness and didn't understand how important painting was to her. Chao comforted her, assuring her that one day her father would understand. Hearing this, Gagi calmed down a little and hugged Chao tightly, shocking him. The next day, Chao was at Beixing's house when she received a message saying, "Meet me at the aquarium." She assumed it was from Wen-sen, believing he might finally confess his feelings. Excited, she quickly sent Chao back home, got dressed, and went to the aquarium. Upon arriving, she messaged Wen-sen to ask where he was, but he was surprised because he had not invited her there. Just then, someone knocked on his door. It was Meiji. He urgently told Wen-sen that they needed to rescue Beixing because her life was in danger. Shocked, Wen-sen rushed to the aquarium and took Beixing away. Back near their homes, Beixing asked why Wen-sen had brought her away so suddenly, but he didn't respond. Just then, Maji signaled him to turn around. Wen-sen did so and saw Maji's friends approaching. They asked if he had found Beixing because she wasn't in the aquarium. Maji lied, saying she wasn't there and that they should look elsewhere. After they left, Beixing, still confused, asked what was going on. Maji then showed her a message from his boss Li, who was looking for her. Maji was shocked and asked why they were after her. Maji explained that her brother Lin had taken a huge loan from his boss and then disappeared. Now, the boss wanted to find Maji to pressure Lin into repaying the debt. Maji, in distress, said she needed to find her brother, but Wen-sen stopped her, insisting that she should stay home for a few days for her safety. Following Wen-sen's advice, Beixing stayed home for the next few days, but she grew restless and bored. She then called Wen-sen to meet her. As they talked, they suddenly had to hide because Li's men were nearby. In the process, Wen-sen ended up very close to Beixing, making her heart race. His did too. They later decided to take a walk, but once again, Li's men spotted them, forcing them to flee. Eventually, they found a place to hide. Later, Maji messaged Wen-sen, telling him there was no need to hide anymore. He had convinced Boss Li that Beixing had gone abroad, so his men would no longer come after her. This news relieved both Wen-sen and Beixing. The next day showed they were relaxing together with Maji, thanking him for his help. When Wen-sen left for a moment, Beixing asked Maji if he planned to stay there permanently. Maji explained that he had always loved fighting, which was why he had joined the gang. However, since Wen-sen had suggested that if he liked fighting, he should consider joining the army instead, he had decided to do so and start a new life. Beixing's exam results were about to be released, making her very nervous. When the results came out, she was shocked she had scored very well. Her parents were also very happy. Later, in the library, Beixing looked troubled. Although she had received good marks, she feared she wouldn't be selected for the same university as Wen-sen. Just then, Gagi arrived and told her she had given up on painting because she believed her father would never approve, so she wasn't going to the art academy. Beixing was shocked and immediately went to talk to teacher Ming, who was drinking with another teacher. Beixing sat with them and, after drinking a little herself, started scolding teacher Ming. She said he treated his daughter like a student rather than considering her happiness. She then calmly explained that if he supported Gagi, their relationship would improve. Teacher Ming listened carefully and then asked if Gagi would accept him as her father if he allowed her to go to art school. Beixing assured him that Gagi would not only accept him but would also see him as the best father in the world. Convinced, teacher Ming finally agreed, making Beixing very happy. Later, as Wen-sen was holding Beixing, she suddenly became emotional and asked him what would happen if they didn't get into the same university. She wondered if he would fall for someone else and forget about her forever. Wen-sen laughed and reassured her that this would never happen because no other girl could take her place. As he showed her the moon, Beixing looked at him intently and at that moment, finally kissed him. Wen-sen was completely shocked by her sudden action. Beixing had gone ahead and kissed Wen-sen out of nowhere, leaving the poor guy so shocked. But once he gathered his senses, he started gazing at her like she was the only star in his sky. It finally clicked for him. His crush, Beixing, actually liked him too. Then, Beixing told him to take her home, so, being the chivalrous guy, Wen-sen carried her on his back and headed off. The next day it was graduation time, and all the students came back to school to pick up their certificates. Gagi showed up and her dad, teacher Ming, handed her the application form for China's top art academy. She just stood there, stunned, realizing her dad was finally on board with her dream of becoming an artist. And just when she was wrapping her head around that, Chow appeared, insisting they had to let Gagi chase her dream. Teacher Ming just shrugged and said he'd already given his permission, then casually walked off, leaving Chow standing there like, wait, that's it? That was way too easy. Gagi smiled and grabbed his hand and they walked away smiling. Later, Gagi spilled all the tea to Wen-sen and Beixing, who were genuinely happy for her. But then, Gagi noticed Gagi and Chow holding hands and teased them about dating. Without missing a beat, Gagi confirmed it. They were officially a couple now. Meanwhile, Wen-sen gave Beixing a flower which made her smile too because she... As the two lovebirds walked home, they stumbled across Lin, who was trying to hide. Beixing wasn't having any of it and told him to come out. Did he even realize how much chaos he'd caused? Lin said he'd come back just for her and was relieved she was safe. But Beijing, not one to let things slide, reminded him that if he actually cared about her or the family, he wouldn't have borrowed money from shady people. Lin claimed he had no idea things would go south so fast, but he'd said he would fix everything. The next day, Zanyu called Beijing to an aquarium. Well, he decided to impress her by dancing underwater and making a heart shape with his hands. It might have worked if he hadn't nearly drowned. He popped out of the water gasping for air, while Beijing scolded him for pulling a stunt like that when he couldn't even swim properly. Zhan Yu, trying to be all serious, explained he just wanted to do something special for her because he really liked her and wanted them to date. He told her that he found her attractive now and couldn't take his eyes off her. He even asked for a second chance, but Beijing was already replaying their history in her head. The time Zhan Yu had accepted her proposal, how they'd been so happy together until he bailed on her at the last minute. She told him she'd learned a hard truth. If you don't love yourself first, no one else will. Zhan Yu, clearly not ready for that kind of deep reflection, asked if she was rejecting him because of Wensen. Beijing didn't sugarcoat it. Yep, it was because of Wensen. There was no future for her and Zhan Yu. She wished him luck finding a girl he'd love, and then walked away, leaving Zhan Yu staring after her like he'd just lost later. Zhan Yu, nursing his broken heart, ended up picking a fight with some guys playing basketball. They just wanted their ball back, but Zhan Yu, in full tragic hero mode, refused. He started ranting about how everything was taken from him. First Beijing, now his basketball. When he mentioned Beijing's name, the guys calmed down and started asking if she'd been his girlfriend and if she'd gone abroad, because they were the goons who were looking for her and Lin. Zhan Yu, still tipsy but honest, told them that she was still here, just always with Wensen. After hearing this, the gangsters went and informed their boss that Beijing was actually still abroad. Meanwhile, Zhan Yu had called Beijing to meet because he was missing her terribly. Beijing showed up, but instead of a warm reunion, she gave Zhan Yu a serious scolding for drinking so much. When she started leaving with Wensen, Zhan Yu felt even worse. In a way, karma had come full circle. The pain Beijing had once felt in the future, Zhan Yu was now experiencing in the present. After meeting him, both Wensen and Beijing were spending time together, when suddenly some of Boss Li's men appeared in front of them, clearly looking for Beijing Maji, quickly signaled Wensen to run, and without wasting a second, Wensen grabbed Beijing's hand and hurried away. They ducked into a photo booth, and though Wensen didn't tell her right away, he knew Li's men were still hunting her. Oblivious to the danger, Beijing was happily taking pictures, enjoying the moment. But then, one of Li's men seemed suspicious that they might be hiding nearby. Wensen caught on immediately and, thinking fast, pulled Beijing close to him to help hide her just in time. Maji showed up and told the men that Beijing had already left. Inside the booth, Beijing was feeling pretty shy. After all, Wensen had gotten really close. Later, Wensen walked Beijing home, still not saying a word about what had happened. On his way back, he called Meiji, wondering why Li's men were still after Beijing when her brother had already paid them back. That's when Meiji told him the ugly truth. Lin hadn't paid anything. In fact, he'd disappeared again. As fate would have it, Wensen soon spotted Lin sneaking around. Furious, Wensen punched him hard and demanded if Lin even realized he was putting Beijing's life in danger. Why hadn't he returned the money yet? Lin, rubbing his jaw, confessed that he had given Boss Li the money, but now they were demanding an extra. Apparently, they claimed an amount he couldn't pay, not even if he sold himself. Desperate and out of options, Lin admitted he had no idea what to do next. Wensen told him there was only one way out: go to the police and tell them everything. If they had proof, they could arrest Boss Li. Sure, Lin might end up in jail too, but at least his family would be safe. After thinking about it, Lin agreed. He said he would do it, but first he needed to wrap up some deals with a few customers. He even acknowledged he wasn't exactly an honest man, so he understood why Wensen didn't trust him, but he begged for one last chance to make things right. He promised he'd have Boss Li and his men arrested soon. On the other hand, Beijing started dreaming that Wensen was sitting in front of her, telling her how much he liked her. In the dream, he kissed her. Beijing was surprised, but happy, and started to reply, "I like you too," when suddenly her mom woke her up. Beijing woke up feeling flustered, but also happy, especially since she'd recently gotten into a really good university. Meanwhile, Wensen was on his way to meet Beijing when he stopped in his tracks. His parents had finally come back home, and he was shocked to see them and asked why they'd returned so suddenly. They smiled and said they'd come to celebrate his graduation. At the same time, we saw Beijing walking toward Wensen's house with her university admission form in hand. She wanted to tell him that she had gotten into the same university as him, but when the door opened and she saw Wensen and his parents standing there, she froze. She was about to leave when Wensen's father invited her inside. Inside the house, Wensen's mother was completely stunned to see Beijing. After all, this was the first time her son had ever brought home a female friend who wasn't Gagi. That could only mean one thing: he must like her. Trusting her son's judgment, his mother immediately took off her bracelet and insisted on giving it to Beijing, practically forcing it on her. Then, with a curious smile, she asked Beijing what she thought about Wensen. Beijing had explained that Wensen was a very good friend of hers and that she really liked him, but only as a friend. Upon hearing this, Wensen's mother had turned to her husband and suggested that they should speak to Beijing's parents. This comment had left both Wensen and Beijing completely stunned. Beijing, feeling extremely shy and flustered, had quickly made an excuse and left. After some time, Wensen had been with Meiji and had asked him what he would do if Beijing's brother Lin reported everything to the police, adding that he himself could be arrested too. Maji had confidently replied that he planned to leave the city before anything like that could happen. Later that night, Wensen had called Gagi as well, and had confided in both Maji and Gagi that he wanted to propose to Beijing, but had no idea how to make it special. He had admitted to them that he wanted his proposal to be 100 times better than Zhan Yu's. At first, both Maji and Gagi had laughed at his nervousness, but had then assured him not to worry, promising they would help him. The next day, Wensen arrived at the zoo, carrying all the decorations he had brought for his proposal to Beijing. But after waiting for a long time and realizing that Meiji was not showing up and that his phone was switched off, Wensen had grown very worried. He had then decided to go out looking for him. On the other side, Boss Li had found out about Meiji's betrayal. Enraged, Boss Li and his men had beaten Meiji badly and had told him he would not survive for long after betraying them like that. While Gagi had brought Beijing to the place where Wensen had planned to propose to her. However, there had been no one there. After much questioning from Beijing, Gagi had finally told her everything, explaining that Wensen was supposed to propose to her that day, but had mysteriously disappeared. Beijing had responded by saying that Gagi should have told her earlier so that she could have dressed up nicely and worn something special. Gagi had reassured her not to worry, saying that she still looked great and that Wensen loved her nature the most anyway. As they were walking together, Beijing had received a call from her mother who had given her shocking news. Beijing had immediately rushed to the police station where she found Wensen already present. It had turned out that Lin had turned himself in to the police and had revealed everything about Boss Li. Their mother had asked the officer what would happen to Lin now, and the officer had explained that they were taking Lin for questioning. Their mother had then instructed Beijing and Wensen to go home, and they both had left the station. On their way back, they had seen that workers were demolishing the lighthouse. Beijing had felt happy and had said that the place she hated the most was finally being torn down. She had then turned to Wensen and mentioned that she had heard he was planning to tell her something important that day and had urged him to go ahead and say it. Wensen, feeling nervous, had admitted that he had wanted to tell her something but hadn't managed to, and that he didn't want to say it just like that because he wanted to do something special for her. Beijing had smiled and told him to forget it, asking him to come with her because she had a surprise for him. She had brought him to a spot and had started counting down. Wensen hadn't understood what was going on, but as soon as she had finished counting, a bunch of balloons had suddenly fallen all around them. At that moment, Beijing had confessed her feelings, telling Wensen that she really liked him, not just recently, but for a long time. She had told him that she had been wanting to tell him this for ages and had suggested that they start dating. Wensen had been completely shocked, but also thrilled upon hearing her confession. However, just as he had been about to reply, Meiji had come running toward them, telling them to come with him immediately, because Boss Li's men were after them. Meiji had explained that they were searching for Beijing, and had told Wensen to take her up to the rooftop while he tried to hold them off. Wensen had quickly led Beijing upstairs but had been panicking about where to hide her. Eventually, he had found a spot and had insisted that she hide there. Although Beijing had refused at first because she was worried about him, Wensen had forced her inside and had locked the door from the outside. Soon after, Boss Li's men had arrived and started interrogating Wensen about Beijing's whereabouts. They had threatened him and even started beating him, but Wensen had refused to give them any information. Beijing had been watching everything from inside and had been terrified. She had then heard Wensen quietly say that he liked her too. Shocked, she had looked outside and had seen Wensen falling from the building. Despite all her efforts to save him, the curse of Wensen's death had not been broken. Wensen had died. Beijing had gone into complete shock. Before she had been able to react or do anything, she had suddenly found herself back in the present. Dazed and devastated, she had wondered whether she had lost Wensen all over again. All the happy moments she had spent with him had come rushing back to her, how much he had cared for her, protected her, and loved her. And worst of all, she had realized that the reason for Wensen's death had been none other than herself. Overcome with guilt and regret, Beijing had broken down in tears, unable to control herself. Nothing had changed in the present. Wensen was still gone. Everything was just as it had been before. Later, Beijing had gone to her brother Lin and had asked him what had happened on the day of her college entrance exam. Lin had been nervous at first, wondering why she was asking such an odd question out of nowhere, but then he admitted that he had been in serious trouble at that time. He had borrowed money from dangerous people, and he had often received messages from an unknown number telling him to turn himself in to the police to save himself from the trouble, or else his sister Beijing's life would be in danger. Lin had continued explaining that on the day of Beijing's entrance exam, the person from that unknown number had called him to the lighthouse. When he had gone there, he had seen a student from Beijing's school being pushed off the lighthouse. He had been horrified by the sight and had realized then just how important family was. Upon hearing this, Beijing had broken down in tears and had asked why it had to be Wensen who suffered so much. Afterwards, she went to her room and cried even harder. She had wanted to time travel again, to delete all the messages and try to save Wensen, but the messages had all disappeared. She had become even more desperate, not knowing how she could possibly save Wensen now. She had wished she could find a way to bring him back. By then, Beijing had cried through the entire night until morning. When her mother entered the room, she assumed that Beijing was feeling heartbroken and deeply sad because of her breakup with Zhan Yu. Beijing had returned to the place where the lighthouse once stood, lost in the memories of Wensen. Suddenly, she had the strange feeling that Wensen was there on the rooftop. Driven by that feeling, she went inside and pleaded with the staff to let her go up, but the place was closed that day, so they stopped her from entering. Despite their refusal, Beijing kept begging them repeatedly. Eventually, she sat down right there and started crying uncontrollably, overwhelmed by memories of Wensen. Beijing's mother arrived to take her home. She tried to comfort her, telling her not to worry, and assuring her that one day everything would be okay. As the two of them were about to leave, Beijing's mother suddenly had trouble with her leg and couldn't walk any further. They rushed her to the hospital, where the doctor explained that there was a minor issue in her leg that would require a small operation. Hearing this, Beijing became extremely worried about her mother. Beijing went to visit Wensen's house, but when she got there, she discovered that his parents no longer lived there. When she asked the woman who now lived in the house if she had the contact number of the previous owners, the woman said no. She explained that the house had been sold multiple times, so she had no information about them. Feeling disappointed, Beijing turned to leave when she suddenly saw Gagi passing by, carrying some paintings. Seeing Gagi made Beijing really happy. Gagi was surprised too, wondering how Beijing still remembered her, because before the time travel, they weren't even friends. As they walked, Gagi admitted she still couldn't believe that Beijing remembered her. Gagi had now become a famous painter, which had always been her dream. Beijing replied that Gagi had been one of the top students, so there was no way she could ever forget her. Then Beijing brought up Wensen's name, which left Gagi even more surprised. She asked Beijing if she really knew Wensen because, as far as she knew, she had been his only close female friend. Beijing smiled and said that Wensen had been such a great person that it was impossible for anyone who knew him to ever forget him. Beijing then asked Gagi if it was true that Wensen had died because of the lighthouse and whether she knew what really happened that day. Gagi became sad and replied that everyone only knew Wensen had fallen from the lighthouse, as if he had committed suicide, but no one really knew the truth. After Wensen's death, his parents were so devastated that they sold their house and moved to Africa, never to return. Beijing remained silent after hearing all this. Since Gagi had some important work to attend to, but was happy to have met Beijing, she invited her to her upcoming painting exhibition. Hearing this, Beijing smiled and promised she would definitely come. Chao had now become a famous actor, something he had always dreamed of. While he was surrounded by his fans, he spotted Beijing in the crowd, and seeing her made him happy. The two of them sat down together and reminisced about their school days, remembering how much fun they used to have when they were in the same class. Beijing mentioned things about Chao that she shouldn't have known before time traveling. Chao was stunned and asked how she knew all of that. Beijing smiled and said, "What if I told you I've time traveled? Would you believe me?" At first, Chao was shocked, but then he replied, "Of course I'd believe you. I've always been interested in mysterious things and have read a lot about time travel, so obviously I would believe you." Beijing then explained how she had time traveled, and during that time, she, Gagi, Wensen, and Chao had all been close friends. Chao asked her how she had returned to the present, and Beijing explained that it had happened because of someone's death. Chao then asked her if she wouldn't have returned had that person not died. Beijing replied that she didn't know for sure, but all she knew was that she desperately wanted to save that person, and she had failed. Chao tried to comfort her and said, "I travel the world a lot for my tours, but as long as I'm in China, you can always come to see me." Hearing that made Beijing feel a little better. Later, the place where the lighthouse once stood was reopened to the public, and Beijing went there again in memory of Wensen. As she was leaving, she accidentally dropped and broke her old mobile phone, the same one that had allowed her to time travel. This made Beijing cry even more, realizing that she was becoming further and further separated from Wensen. She whispered, "Wensen, I miss you so much. I wish we could be together." The next day, Beijing returned to her workplace, the zoo, from where she had been previously fired. She apologized to her boss and pleaded with him to give her one last chance. After much convincing, her boss agreed to rehire her, but asked why she wanted to come back when she had never liked the job in the first place. Beijing replied, "Because I've realized that every job has a purpose, and this time I'll give it my all." While walking through the zoo, Beijing was flooded with memories of Wensen because during the time travel period they used to visit this place often. She also remembered the time she had organized a fireworks party just for Wensen and how happy he had been then. Maji had now started working at a repair shop and had given up all his bad habits ever since Wensen's death. Before the time travel, Wensen and Maji had already become good friends. One day, Zhan Yu arrived at the repair shop to get his car fixed. After handing the car over to Maji, he left. Meanwhile, Beijing was busy working when her boss came over and scolded her once again because a talking parrot from their zoo had gone missing. The boss reminded her that she had promised to work sincerely this time. Beijing apologized and assured the boss that she would find the exact same parrot from the market as it was her fault and she wanted to fix it herself. Later, Beijing was at the market where she managed to find a parrot that looked exactly like the one from the zoo. However, the parrot didn't talk much. She explained to the seller that their zoo's parrot used to say, "I like you" all the time, which made it unique. The shopkeeper told her that teaching this parrot to say the same thing could take more than a year. At that time, Meiji was holding the exact same parrot Beijing was searching for. It turned out that he had stolen the zoo's parrot. The reason behind his action was revealed in a flashback. Meiji and Wensen often visited the zoo and spent time with that parrot. Wensen had trained the parrot to say "I like you" because he wanted to confess his feelings to Beijing, but never found the courage to do so directly. Instead, he had the parrot repeat the phrase over and over. In the present, Meiji was leaving with the parrot when Beijing saw him. She recognized the parrot but couldn't see the person's face clearly, so she didn't realize it was Meiji later, the zoo owner. Checked the CCTV footage which revealed Meiji as the thief. Beijing was shocked but requested her boss not to call the police, saying she would personally retrieve the parrot. Although Meiji had left his criminal life behind, Boss Li's men continued to bully him. They mocked him, suggesting that reading books wouldn't make him a good person, and then started beating him. Meiji didn't fight back because he didn't want to return to his old life after Wensen's death. He remained silent and let them hurt him. Beijing witnessed the entire incident while hiding nearby. After they left, she ran inside and called an ambulance, which took Meiji away. Beijing explored Meiji's place and found the parrot, along with a photo of Wensen and Meiji together. She took the photo to a shop and asked if they could tell her when it was taken. The shopkeeper replied that although it said 2019 on the back, the photo was much older. As she was leaving, Beijing showed her broken phone to the shopkeeper and asked if he could fix it. Later, Beijing was with her mother, who was about to undergo surgery on her leg. While waiting, Beijing checked her phone, which had been repaired. She was shocked to find 2 recovered messages from an unknown number. One message said, "I like you, Beijing," and the other asked, "Beijing, do you know me?" She was surprised but didn't delete them immediately. The next day, after her mother's successful surgery, Beijing felt relieved. She sat outside, looking at the messages again, and decided to delete one of them because she was now ready to go back to the past and save Wensen. As soon as she deleted the message, she was transported back to the past. She felt extremely happy and soon spotted Wensen. However, she also saw Boss Li's men approaching him. Without wasting time, she ran to Wensen, grabbed his hand, and pulled him away to safety. After they had run far enough, Wensen stood there, shocked to see her. Beijing hugged him tightly and told him she was grateful he was safe, adding that he had no idea how happy she was to see him alive. Wensen stared at her in confusion and asked whether she knew him. Beijing confirmed that she did. She told him his name was Wensen, that he was the school's top student, and that he was a very good person. She said it didn't matter if they hadn't been friends before, they could get to know each other now. Wensen listened in disbelief as Beijing assured him that while he had always protected her, this time she would protect him. She promised that she wouldn't let anything happen to him. When she directly confessed her feelings, Wensen was so shocked that he froze on the spot. Suddenly, things changed again, and Beijing found herself back in the present. She was confused, wondering why she had returned, when it wasn't even the day of the college entrance exams and Wensen had been fine when she left. While sitting at the bus stop, deep in thought, she looked at the last message from the unknown number that said, "I like you, Beijing." She wished herself good luck and deleted the message. Once again, she was transported back to the past, where students were heading home. Beijing ran around searching for Wensen. She accidentally bumped into a girl and apologized before finally spotting Wensen. He was looking at his phone repeatedly. Beijing grabbed his hand again and dragged him away with her. As his phone fell, Beijing picked it up and noticed that he had typed a message saying, "I like you, Beijing." It was then she realized Wensen himself had sent those anonymous messages. She was pulled back into the present once more and found herself confused about why she kept returning. At that moment, Beijing calmed herself down and decided to return to the hospital to meet Maji, as she had heard that he had regained consciousness. However, upon reaching there, she was informed that Maji had already left. Beijing then spoke to a nurse, who explained that Meiji had appeared to be in quite a hurry when he departed. Beijing found herself wondering why Meiji had been in such a rush and where he might be going. Meanwhile, Meiji had returned to the repair shop. The shop owner told him that the same group of people had come back and had taken all of his belongings. Although Meiji didn't react much to this news, when he realized that the photo of Wensen, one that Beijing had taken, was missing, he began to suspect that his old friends had stolen it. Convinced of this, he decided to go after them to retrieve the photo. On his way, he came across Beijing, who wanted to talk to him. However, Maji ignored her completely. Beijing told him that she understood he hated her, but she pleaded with him to tell her something about Wensen and what had happened that day. Despite her efforts, Maji didn't respond and walked away silently. He then went to his old group of friends and demanded that they return his belongings. They refused, and during their conversation, it revealed that Maji had spent 10 years in prison for killing Boss Li. In the past, Boss Li had confessed to Maji that he had pushed Wensen off the lighthouse and made it clear that he would never forgive anyone who wronged him. Maji had been shocked to hear this and had asked Li if he had really killed Wensen. The confrontation had quickly escalated into a fight, and Li had even tried to kill Maji. In self-defense, Maji had struck him on the head, which had led to Li's death. In the present, one of Maji's old friends told him that after Li's death, they had all faced many problems. He accused Maji of ruining their lives and said that after everything, they would never allow him to live peacefully. The group then tried to attack Maji. Just as the situation became dangerous, Beijing arrived. She saw Maji being attacked and immediately intervened, trying to protect him. She grabbed his hand and pulled him away, helping him escape. On the other side, Beijing's brother, Lin, was passing by. When he saw his sister leaving with Maji, he was shocked. Later on, Maji searched through his belongings, desperately looking for the missing photo, but he couldn't find it. As he was about to go back inside to continue his search, Beijing revealed that she had the photo. She told him that she had taken it when she had come to his room to get the parrot. Hearing this, Maji finally calmed down. However, before they could relax, Maji's old friends surrounded them once again. At that moment, Lin arrived and ordered them to stay away from his sister. A fight broke out between Lin and Maji's former friends. Shortly after, the police arrived, forcing everyone to flee the scene. After the chaos, Beijing checked if her brother was all right. He assured her that he was fine. But when Beijing looked around, she realized that Maji was gone. She then remembered what the nurse had said earlier, that Maji had hurried out of the hospital because he was worried about missing a flight. This thought made Beijing rush to the airport, hoping to find him there. However, despite searching, she couldn't find him anywhere. She thought to herself that Wenson had once again made her miss the chance to learn the truth about him. Feeling hopeless, she became very sad. But actually, Meiji hadn't left China at all. He was still there, looking at Wenson's photo and missing him deeply. As he stared at the picture, he recalled a memory from their past. Back then, Wenson often used to secretly watch Beijing from afar. Meiji had once encouraged Wenson to talk to Beijing and remind her that they had known each other for a long time. But Wenson had refused, saying that Beijing only liked Zhan Yu. They had taken a photo together during that time, and Meiji had written 2019 on it, hoping that they would meet again in that year. In the present, Meiji reflected on those memories and remarked to himself that Wenson had been a fool for never expressing his feelings to Beijing afterward. Meiji was at his repair shop. It seemed as though he was preparing to leave. At that moment, Zhan Yu and Tanji arrived to pick up their repaired car. During their visit, Tanji joked with Zhan Yu, asking if he was planning to leave her just before their wedding the same way he had left Beijing for someone else. Zhan Yu laughed and reassured her that he would never do something like that because he loved her. Hearing this, Meiji became furious. He thought about how Wenson had never been able to confess his feelings to Beijing because he had believed Zhan Yu and Beijing liked each other. Yet Zhan Yu had left Beijing just days before their wedding. As Zhan Yu complimented the repair work, saying Meiji had done a great job with the car, Meiji suddenly punched him hard, knocking him down. He and Tanji were both shocked and couldn't understand why he had reacted that way. Without saying anything further, Meiji left the shop. Shortly afterward, he called Beijing and told her that he needed to talk to her. The two of them sat together and had a conversation. Beijing told Meiji that she had found out everything Wenson had done for her. In response, Meiji asked her what the point was in knowing all of it now. He explained that Wenson had truly liked her, so much so that when he had found out her life was in danger, he had left everything behind to protect her. Meiji admitted that he had helped Wenson in those efforts. Meiji apologized to Meiji on behalf of her brother Lin, saying that if Lin hadn't borrowed money, none of the trouble would have happened. Meiji then told her that Wenson had withdrawn all the money his parents had given him for studying abroad and used it to pay off Lin's debts. Hearing this, Meiji was even more surprised. Meiji then handed Wenson's mobile phone to her, saying that she could keep it now. After that, he left. Later, Beijing was seen running and crying uncontrollably. Meiji had told her everything. While running, she recalled how, on the day Zhan Yu had refused to take the shoes she had bought him, Wenson had also been there, staying close to protect her. She remembered that when Wenson had noticed Bosley's men searching for her, he had approached her under the pretense of playing with a water ball, just to be near and keep her safe. She also recalled the day of the college entrance exam, when it had been raining, and Wenson had walked her home. Back then, she hadn't understood why he had done so. She thought about how, when Lee's men had come looking for her, they had started heading upstairs. Wenson had run ahead, covering his head with his coat so that they would mistake him for her brother Lin. The men had believed it and had gone after him. She remembered hearing noises from downstairs and seeing a black umbrella lying there, but had no idea what had actually happened at the time. Later, at the lighthouse, Lee and his men had realized that the boy they were chasing wasn't Lin. They had angrily confronted Wenson, demanding to know why he had tricked them and whether he thought they were fools. Wenson had explained that he had done it because they were wrong. He told them he had already repaid Lin's debts, yet they had still continued to harass Beijing. That was why he had reported them to the police. Just then, the sound of police sirens had been heard, causing Lee's men to panic and try to run away. However, Lee had been furious. He had viciously beaten Wenson, leaving him in a terrible condition. Realizing he might not survive, Wenson had managed to send Beijing a message from his phone, one he had wanted to send for years. The message had simply said, "I like you," and just then, he had pushed Wenson, causing him to fall. While falling, Wenson had thought to himself one last time that he liked Beijing and he had died. Back in the present, Beijing had cried even harder as she remembered how Wenson had given his life for her. Meanwhile, Meiji had gone to Beijing's house and handed her Wenson's secret diary. He told her that it was the last thing he could do for his brother, and that wherever Wenson was now, he hoped he was happy, knowing Beijing finally understood how much he had loved her. Hearing this, Beijing had become even more emotional and had thanked Meiji. He told her that he was leaving the city the next morning to start a new life. After saying that, he quietly walked away. Later, Beijing had been seen reading Wenson's diary. Through it, she learned that Wenson hadn't liked her just since school days, but since their childhood. He had first noticed her when some kids at the zoo had been bullying him. Beijing had stepped in to protect him. She had comforted him and had told him never to be afraid because she would always protect him. Wensen had been so happy with her words that he had liked her from that moment on. June then, Wensen had tried every way possible to get closer to her. Years later, when he had gone to see the teacher during junior school, he had noticed Beijing's transfer form on the desk. She was moving to another school. Determined to follow her, Wensen had worked hard to get admitted to the same school. When the results had been announced, Wensen had found out that he had been accepted into Beijing's new school. He had been overjoyed at the thought of studying in the same class as her. However, his mother had later come to tell him that his father had been transferred to another city and Wensen would have to study at a different school. His heart had broken. In his diary, Wensen had written that his biggest regret was that he had never once properly greeted Beijing or even told her his name was Wensen. Fast forward to 2004, Wensen showed up outside Beijing's school, holding zoo tickets like a hopeful salesman with freebies. He was psyching himself up, thinking, maybe she doesn't remember me, but I'm going to make sure she notices me today. Little did he know, fate was about to slap him again. Beijing strolled by, chatting with Tanji, who teased her about liking boys who played basketball. Wensen overheard that and probably made a mental note to buy a basketball on his way home, but Beijing didn't even recognize him. Wensen dragged his bruised ego home and vented in his diary again, admitting he had no clue she was into basketball guys. So he started playing basketball himself, training like his life depended on it. After months of blood, sweat, and probably a few sprained ankles, Wensen became a pretty good player. He finally worked up the nerve to give Beijing a letter and a rabbit hairband. But when he approached her, she just asked where the washroom was and walked off. Later, when he tried again, he heard her screaming and rushed in like a superhero to save her from a fire. Inside, he was thinking, I'm all grown up now, I can be her protector, and he did save her. But when he went to call a doctor, and suddenly Zhan Yu shows up. To make matters worse, Beijing assumed Zhan Yu was her savior, and when Wensen saw her thanking Zhan Yu, he was furious at himself. If only I'd run faster, he thought. Maybe she wouldn't be crushing on him right now. Poor guy couldn't catch a break. By 2007, Zhan Yu proudly announced he'd joined Beijing's school. Wensen was in the same class too and thought, at least I get to see her every day. But soon, he realized Beijing only had eyes for Zhan Yu, following him around like a fangirl at a concert. After the fire incident, she was so smitten with Zhan Yu that dating him had become her life's mission. Seeing this, Wensen's heart broke again. Eventually, he decided to step aside like a noble fool for her happiness. He drafted an I like you message but never sent it. He just kept it in his drafts folder, where love confessions go to die. One day, when everyone was checking their monthly results, Wensen overheard Beijing telling Zhan Yu she wanted to go to the same university as him. That was the final blow, Wensen thought. Why do I keep doing this to myself? So he wandered off to the zoo they first met as kids, probably hoping for a miracle, and found the same talking parrot. He spent days teaching it to say, I like you, because apparently birds get to confess love when he couldn't. Eventually, Wensen told his mom he was ready to study abroad. His parents worked overseas anyway, and he figured there was no point hanging around anymore. He only stayed in China for Beijing, but now he felt it was time to move on. As he was packing to leave, he remembered Beijing's dream of going to the same university as Zhan Yu. Despite everything, he wanted to help her. So, he prepared study notes for her to improve her grades. But when he went near her house to deliver them, he overheard Boss Li's thugs threatening her brother Lin. They said if the money wasn't paid, they'd kidnap Beijing. Wensen freaked out and rushed to Maji to discuss what to do. Out of options, he withdrew all the money his parents had saved for his studies and, with Maji's help, paid off Boss Li. Wensen was probably thinking, this wasn't how I planned to spend my tuition money, but at least Beijing was safe. Wensen believed that all the problems had finally come to an end, and felt reassured that Beijing would now be able to pursue her dreams safely. He had managed to send her the notes in a way that they reached her without issue. Just when he was about to leave for his studies abroad and was already at the airport, Maji informed him that Boss Li's men were once again looking for Beijing. He said that Boss Li had drastically increased her brother Lin's debt, causing more trouble. Wensen had to come back, which meant he never ended up going abroad. After that, he and Meiji began planning how they could protect Beijing. Meiji had asked Wensen if, after everything settled down, he wouldn't regret having done so much for Beijing when she might never even know about it. In response, Wensen had said that he wouldn't regret it because he had already understood very well that he and Beijing were not destined to be together. No matter how much he tried to get closer to her, he never seemed to reach her. He had admitted to feeling jealous of Zanyu, who he thought was incredibly lucky because Zanyu got to watch fireworks with Beijing, take graduation photos with her, and study at the same university. When the seat next to Beijing became empty, Wensen was about to sit there, but just then another girl arrived and sat in that seat instead. Wensen had thought to himself that perhaps he and Beijing really weren't meant to be yet he was still happy to see her happy from a distance. After reading Wensen's entire diary, Beijing had cried terribly and missed him deeply. She wondered how she could have been so stupid for never realizing how Wensen had felt about her right from the start. At that moment, she started recalling how every time time travel had occurred, she had ended up in the very moments Wensen had wished to experience with her. Whether it was the fireworks event, the graduation photo, or the day of the college entrance exam, in a way, through time travel, Wensen's dreams were being fulfilled. Beijing then went to the beach and, while remembering Wensen, cried uncontrollably. She screamed his name, apologized to him loudly, and confessed that she liked him very much. She wished she had noticed him every single time. That's when she recalled that every time either Wensen or Beijing had unresolved feelings, time travel had given them another chance to go back to the past. She thought that maybe if she could not confess her feelings to Wensen and stop her brother Lin from taking loans, things might change. She started thinking more deeply about all these possibilities. Later, when Beijing was at her workplace, Chao came to meet her. As they went for a walk, Chao asked her to tell him the next part of her time travel story. Beijing replied that the story had ended. Chao asked if that meant she wouldn't save that boy anymore. Beijing answered that in a life without feelings, where she couldn't tell Wensen how important he was to her, nothing else mattered. Chao then explained to her that confessing her love wasn't more important than saving someone's life. He advised her that if she still had a chance to go back in time, she should definitely go. Wo knew. Maybe the rules had changed this time? After thinking deeply, Beijing agreed. Once Chao left, she started looking at Wensen's mobile phone and saw the unsent message that said, "I like you, Beijing." She realized that deleting that message would allow her to time travel one last time, so she deleted the message and found herself traveling back again. This time, she returned to 2007, and she was very happy. She realized that the rules had truly changed, and that maybe, this time, she would get to stay with Wensen for much longer. Feeling excited, she ran quickly to find Wensen, who was rehearsing for the art festival. Beijing sat down beside him, stared at him, and thought to herself how happy she was to see him again. She then requested him to teach her the play he was practicing. Wensen was shocked that his longtime crush, Beijing, was not only noticing him, but also talking to him directly. Delighted, he happily agreed. Beijing returned home where she saw her brother Lin in a crowd selling fake products. After he left, Beijing told the people the truth that the products were fake. The public got angry and started demanding their money back. At home, Beijing's parents returned everyone's money while scolding Lin harshly because Beijing had come home and told them the entire truth. Later, in her room, Beijing said to herself that she wouldn't let anything go wrong this time, and that she absolutely had to stop Lin. The next day, when Wensen came to school, he found that Beijing was waiting for him. She told him that they had always been in the same class but had never really spoken to each other. Then, before Wensen could introduce himself, Beijing said that she already knew everything about him, that his name was Wensen and that he looked really good when he smiled. Wensen was overjoyed to hear Beijing's words, wondering if she was really praising him. Then, Beijing told him that they would go home together that day. The two of them are sitting together on the bus. Wensen's long-held dream of sitting next to Beijing had finally come true. As they rode the bus, Beijing played a song for Wensen. It was the same song Wensen had always wanted to play for her but had never managed to. He was stunned but happy. One by one, Beijing was doing all the things Wensen had regretted never getting to do, and for the first time, everything felt right. Beijing asked Wensen whether he knew how to ride a bicycle. She told him that if he didn't, she could teach him. Hearing this, Wensen happily agreed and was ready to learn. The next day, Beijing was on her way to Wensen's house. They saw Gagi, who was having an argument with her father. It was because her father wanted her to focus on studying, but Gagi just wanted to go outside and play. So, Beijing stops Gagi and explains to her that if she thought her dad didn't understand her, then she should talk to him more often. As Gagi got up and was about to leave, Beijing told her that she should start talking to her father by telling him about her dreams. Beijing explained to her that if she started sharing her dreams with him now, only then would he be ready to support her in the future. Hearing this, Gagi left without saying anything. After this, Wensen and Beijing were riding a bicycle together. Wensen was extremely nervous because he wasn't able to keep his balance. Beijing told him that he was scared of falling in front of her and getting embarrassed, and that was the reason he wasn't trying properly. Wensen looked at Beijing in surprise because what she had said was absolutely true. Then, Beijing started riding the bicycle without looking back at him, and a little while later she fell. In his hurry to reach her as soon as possible, Wensen finally managed to balance himself and ride the bicycle properly. He quickly came to Beijing and asked if she was okay. Beijing smiled and said that her falling had worked. Hearing her words, Wensen also started laughing. Afterward, Wensen was looking at the same draft message on his phone where he had typed, "I like you, Beijing." The next day, when Wensen and Beijing were about to go home, they found out that it was raining outside. Neither of them had an umbrella. So Wensen told Beijing to wait there and he said he would be right back. But Beijing didn't stay there. Instead, she started following him. While following him, she accidentally bumped into a girl, causing her papers to fall to the ground. At that moment, Beijing remembered that exactly the same thing had happened before. She thought to herself that she had bumped into the same girl earlier when she had time traveled for a short time. She realized that after bumping into that girl, she had found Wensen's mobile on the ground, and when she had picked up his phone, she had read the message that said, "I like you." Panicking, she started saying that she had already come to the year 2007 once before. At that moment, she saw Wensen, who was taking out an umbrella for Beijing. Seeing this, Beijing thought that it meant Wensen had typed the "I like you" message all those years ago and had been holding on to his feelings to spend more time with her. She thought that she might be forcing Wensen to confess his feelings by coming too close to him, and because of that, she needed to distance herself from him. Then, the next day, Beijing didn't come for the rehearsal. On the phone, she lied to Wensen, saying she wasn't feeling well and wouldn't be able to come. But in reality, she was completely fine. Just then, Beijing's father came in and told her that they were going out, and he asked her not to fight with her brother Lin while they were gone. After hearing this, Beijing went to Lin and found out that he had again bought a lot of products to sell. Lin was telling her that the last time the products hadn't been good, but this time they were very good. He was confident that he would become rich very soon and was even thinking of renting a shop. Listening to all this, Beijing became very worried about her brother's behavior. Beijing went to school at night for some work. There, she met Wensen, who asked her how she was feeling and told her that she had missed class that day. He said it was fine and offered to teach her the music lesson she had missed. But Beijing firmly said no and told him that she was not participating in the art festival anymore. Wensen, feeling sad, asked her why, but she said she didn't think it was important to tell him the reason. Then she walked away from there. Wensen found Beijing's rude behavior very strange. The next day, everyone was getting a group photo clicked. Wensen was happy because Beijing was standing next to him, but then Beijing intentionally went and stood next to Chao. Seeing this, Wensen felt even worse and started wondering why Beijing was suddenly distancing herself from him. On the other hand, Beijing also wasn't feeling good about what she was doing. When the photo was clicked, she kept staring at Wensen without stopping. Meanwhile, Beijing's brother Lin had finally rented a shop. Seeing this, Beijing became very angry. She reminded him that she had told him not to get involved in such things, but he still didn't listen. Lin ignored everything Beijing said and continued to do the same things. Later, Beijing was in the library when Wensen came to her. But seeing him, Beijing left without saying anything. Once again, Wensen felt deeply hurt by her behavior. The next day, when Beijing came out of her house, she found Wensen waiting outside. She asked him why he was there. Wensen replied that he wanted to know why she was ignoring him. He asked her if he had made any mistake. Beijing replied that it wasn't like that, but still asked him to leave her alone. After saying that, she walked away. As predicted, Lin went to Boss to ask for money. He was begging him repeatedly to give him money, but Li refused to give him anything. Just then, Beijing arrived there and tried to forcefully take her brother away, but Lin wasn't ready to listen. Beijing got very angry. Boss came to Beijing and told her that he liked her attitude. Hearing this, Beijing angrily told him not to talk to her at all because she hated people like him, those who valued money more than human life. Hearing this, Boss Li got irritated and took Lin with him to give him the money, While Boss Li's men stopped Beijing outside, and one of them said that they needed to teach her a lesson. Meiji was the newest recruit in their so-called gang and suddenly discovered he wasn't brave enough to lay a hand on a girl. Good for him. So while the other boys were getting ready to teach Beijing a lesson she clearly didn't sign up for, Wenson swooped in like a surprise hero and threw himself in front of her, taking the beating instead. It turned out he got pretty roughed up just to protect her. Meanwhile, Beijing was practically begging them not to hurt Wenson anymore. Magi, watching all this, stood there completely shocked. He hadn't expected to witness a live-action drama where Li's men were busy forcing people to hurt others for no real reason. Eventually, Wenson was in a hospital bed and the doctor was casually informing everyone that Wenson needed proper rest. Beijing, however, was not about to let this go. She scolded Wenson up and down, demanding why on earth he had risked his life for her and whether he ever thought about putting himself first for once. But fast forward to the next day, and Beijing was suddenly acting like Wenson's personal nurse. She even carried his bag to school so he wouldn't have shoulder pain. In class, she plopped herself down in the seat next to him, completely ignoring his friend who politely pointed out it was his seat. She boldly declared that the seat was hers now, at least until Wenson got better. Wenson, who was clearly loving the attention, signaled his friend to just let it be. The friend, now convinced they were a couple, left. Later, in Wenson's house, the two of them were watching a movie together like an old married couple. Eventually, Wenson dozed off, and Beijing did too. But when Beijing woke up, things got dramatic. She stared at Wenson, thinking to herself how madly in love she was with him, and how impossible it was to stay away. Just as she leaned in to kiss him, Wenson's eyes popped open and he stared back at her in surprise, realizing just how close she was. For a second, he looked ready to kiss her too, but Beijing panicked, made up some random excuse, and bolted out of there like she was running from a pop quiz next. Lin entered the picture. Despite Beijing practically begging him not to, he went ahead and signed a contract with Boss Li anyway, pocketing a nice bundle of cash. Apparently, Lin believed in making bad decisions with full confidence. Later, Beijing was sitting at her usual seat in class, no longer next to Wenson because he was all healed up by then. Just when things seemed normal, an earthquake hit. Chaos broke out as all the students scrambled out, but Wenson was busy doing something far more heroic, desperately looking for Beijing. Even during an earthquake, he was more concerned about her than saving his own skin. Eventually, he found her, pulled her close, and led her out of danger. By the time they got out, the earthquake had stopped, but Beijing had something to say. She asked him why, when everyone else was worried about themselves, he was busy searching for her. She practically demanded to know who she was to him, that he cared so much. After lecturing him, she stormed off, leaving Wenson looking like he just failed an exam. Afterward, Wenson, still brooding, was playing basketball. He played well, but after getting tired, he sat down, only to be approached by Zanyu. He gave Wenson a compliment, saying he was good at basketball, but then casually asked the big question: did he like Beijing? He said he'd noticed Wenson always worrying about her. Wenson, finally surrendering to the obvious, admitted that yes, he liked her, but he was keeping his feelings on silent mode. Meanwhile, Beijing was home sick with a fever and skipping school. She was on a call with Chao, who told her that the school's statue had broken during the earthquake and that teacher Ming had now assigned everyone to draw the statue. Beijing found that odd, since that task usually happened during college entrance exam season. She wondered why everything was happening earlier than scheduled. At that moment, Wenson showed up at her house with medicine and homework. Before Beijing could say much, they suddenly heard her mom screaming in pain. The two of them rushed to get her to the hospital, where the doctor told them her mom would need a small surgery on her leg. Beijing was stunned because that surgery wasn't supposed to happen yet, at least not according to her memory of events. She started realizing that things were seriously out of sync. The earthquake had happened in the wrong city. Lin had opened his shop too soon, and now even the statue competition was ahead of schedule. Basically, the timeline was doing whatever it wanted. That night, Beijing stayed at the hospital with her mom, and Wenson insisted on staying too, claiming he couldn't leave her alone. Beijing, however, had made up her mind. She flat out told him she didn't want his help anymore and asked him to please understand and leave. Wenson was left feeling like someone had stepped on his heart. Later, Beijing wrote in her diary, pouring out every detail of her time-traveling adventures. A to Z, nothing left out. She wrote down how this was the reason she was keeping her distance from Wenson, because the only way she could save him was if he started hating her and stopped caring about her completely. As if that wasn't sad enough, she burst into tears, hating the fact that breaking Wensen's heart was part of the plan. Then, while Beijing was out walking, she came across Maji, who was busy watching a fight on TV, as if it was the highlight of his day. Beijing stopped and struck up a conversation, telling him he should stay away from Boss Li's men because, unlike them, he wasn't a bad person. Maji said she used to interfere in her brother's life, and now she was interfering in his position. Beijing patiently explained that she was only trying to make him see that fighting wasn't cool, and asked if he'd really be okay living with the regret of accidentally killing someone in a fight. She also pointed out how awful it was when Boss Li's men beat people so badly. Just then, Wensen arrived, and it was like someone had hit his protective mode button. He immediately yanked Beijing away from Maji and demanded to know what she was doing there and why she was talking to him. Maji, apparently amused, asked if Wensen was her boyfriend. Wensen, not missing a beat, pushed Beijing behind him and told Maji to stay away from his friend, then asked Beijing who exactly she was. Ignoring Wensen's protective instincts, Beijing told Meiji to come with her. Wensen, thoroughly confused and more than a little annoyed, reminded her that she said her family problems were over, so why was she still dealing with this guy? While they were walking away, Maji pointed out to Beijing that it was obvious how much she liked Wensen, so he couldn't understand why she had used him. Afterward, Beijing had left school and gone to Lin's shop to help him earn money so they could repay the debt. Lin scolded her, asking her to return to school. He told her that if their mother found out, she would scold him badly, but Beijing didn't listen to him. One day, while Beijing was at the shop, Boss Li suddenly showed up and started demanding his money, an outrageous 500,000 yuan. Lin was shocked and reminded him that he had only borrowed 200,000 yuan. Boss Li coldly explained that if he hadn't lent Lin that money, he would have doubled it by now. Lin tried to reason with him, saying he could only repay the money after 6 months. But as soon as Boss Li heard that, he ordered his men to beat Lin badly and threatened him to arrange the money as soon as possible. Seeing this, Beijing immediately tried to call the police, but Boss Li snatched her phone and smashed it on the ground. He warned both of them that if they didn't return his money quickly, he wouldn't spare them. At the same time, Boss Li's men started throwing everything in Lin's shop onto the floor, trashing the place completely. Maji, who was there watching all of this, was left stunned. He had never thought things could be this cruel and found it disturbing to see people being treated like that. Meanwhile, Wensen was having a conversation with Zhan Yu. He told him that Beijing had completely changed and wasn't the same person anymore. Zhan Yu responded that Wensen was overthinking it. He advised him to tell Beijing how he really felt. If she liked him back, Wensen should express his feelings more openly. After hearing this, Wensen looked at the 2 concert tickets he had bought, deciding that he wanted to take Beijing to the concert and finally confess his feelings to her. At the same time, Maji came to Beijing and told her that she had been right all along. Fighting wasn't cool, and it was painful to watch others suffer. Beijing teased him by saying that since he liked war movies so much, he could join the army instead. That way he could protect people rather than harm them. Meiji thought carefully about her suggestion. Later on, Lin and Beijing were returning home together. Lin admitted that Beijing had been right, he shouldn't have borrowed the money, but he promised to fix everything as soon as possible. Beijing didn't respond and simply stayed quiet. Days passed, and Beijing hadn't been to school for a long time. Wensen was growing increasingly worried about her. He went to her house and stood downstairs, hoping to talk to her. However, since Beijing didn't want to see him anymore, he couldn't gather the courage to go upstairs. Meanwhile, Beijing was busy keeping an eye on Boss Li's men. She was following them and collecting evidence against them. She had been tailing them for days, carefully noting their movements and tracking when and where they went. Lin was later seen looking at some photographs when Beijing came in. He told her that a friend had given him evidence against Boss Li. Beijing examined the evidence and decided they would use it the next time Boss Li tried to threaten them. She also said they should give it all to the police. Then Lin handed her a concert ticket, telling her that a friend had given it to him for her and that this friend would be waiting for her there. Beijing immediately understood that it was Wensen. At the same time, Boss Li was informed by his men that Lin's sister had been collecting evidence against them and watching them all day, recording who they attacked and what crimes they committed. Boss Li scowled and declared that they needed to teach that girl a lesson. Wensen was at a concert, waiting for Beijing to arrive. Eventually, Beijing did come. Wensen got the opportunity to go up on stage and speak in front of everyone. He felt happy, thinking that Beijing was finally there, and he could now say everything he had wanted to. But before he could confess his feelings, Beijing started leaving because she had realized what Wensen was about to do. The crowd had been cheering Wensen on, encouraging him to speak. However, as he noticed Beijing walking away, his heart broke. Still, he told everyone that there was a girl he had liked since childhood and that she was very pretty. Meanwhile, Beijing had come outside, feeling deeply troubled for breaking Wensen's heart. At that moment, she received a call from Boss Li, who threatened her over the phone, that her boyfriend's name was Wensen Right and that she should watch what he was going to do to him. Beijing had panicked and pleaded with him not to hurt Wensen, saying they were not in a relationship. But Li had already cut the call. Wensen also came outside at that point. He told Beijing that he needed to talk to her. In response, Beijing started yelling at him, asking him what exactly he wanted to say. She questioned if it was because she had saved him from bullies in childhood that he liked her, or if it was because he had saved her once when she was trapped in a fire and hurt his hand in the process. She pushed him away, saying that she had never told him to like her or to follow her around. She insisted that she just wanted him to leave her life forever because she did not like him at all. Hearing all this, Wensen's eyes filled with tears. He realized how much Beijing seemed to hate him. Even then, he stopped her and asked where she was going so late at night. Beijing was actually going to meet Boss Li, but told Wensen it was none of his business and told him to move out of her way. Wensen's heart was completely broken. After she left, he cried badly and finally made up his mind that if Beijing hated him so much, he should really leave her life. At the same time, Beijing was crying just as much. But when she reached, Boss Li's place was on fire. It wasn't clear what had happened there. Li was lying dead, and Beijing was also present, looking shocked at the scene. The next day, Wensen was talking to his friends. He told them that he was planning to go abroad. His friends asked him lots of questions, like when he was leaving. Beijing overheard their conversation and later asked Wensen at the bus stop whether he was really going abroad. At first, Wensen didn't reply, but then he confirmed it. He told her that she should be happy because now she wouldn't have to see his face again. He then boarded the bus, leaving Beijing feeling extremely upset. Beijing was sitting alone asking herself whether she was really happy now that Wensen hated her. Later, when Beijing was gathering her things from class, she accidentally dropped her diary, which Wensen found and picked up. Out of curiosity, he started reading it. He was completely shocked by what he read. Beijing had written about all her time travels, when and how they happened, and why she was pushing Wensen away to save his life. Wensen was stunned and couldn't believe time travel was even real. But since everything was written in Beijing's own handwriting, he started to believe it was true. He realized that Beijing had been dealing with all of this on her own. He decided that if she wanted him to stay away for his own safety, he would do exactly that. While Zanyu told Wensen that he had heard about his plans to go abroad, he said he wanted to throw Wensen a farewell party. Wensen agreed, and they invited Chao and Gagi too. Gagi suggested they should also invite Beijing, but Wensen refused, saying they shouldn't bother her. After that, Beijing was preparing a cake for Wensen. She wanted him to taste something she had made herself before he left. She called Chao and asked him to take the cake to the party. Chao insisted that she should bring it herself, but she explained that she wasn't invited so she couldn't come. She requested him to take it instead. Later, Wensen, Zanyu, and Gagyu were together at the party. Beijing arrived with Chao, who had convinced her to wear a costume to deliver the cake to Wensen by herself. They appeared at the party and Chao explained that the cake was from him for Wensen. Wensen was pleased, but as Beijing handed him the cake, she accidentally dropped it on him. Beijing quickly removed her costume and apologized. Everyone was even more surprised to see that it was her. Wensen asked her if she enjoyed teasing him, coming close whenever she felt like it and then pushing him away after saying whatever she wanted. Beijing tried to explain that it wasn't like that. Gagi also told them they should all let go of their anger because they were friends. However, Wensen didn't listen to anyone and walked away. Beijing suddenly remembered that she had read in Wensen's diary about how he wanted to watch the season's first snow with her. She called out, asking if they wouldn't watch the snow together. Still, Wensen didn't stop and walked away. The next day, Lin was watching the news about Boss Li's death. It was reported that his body had been found, but nobody knew who had killed him. Lin felt satisfied, thinking Boss Li had gotten what he deserved. On the other hand, Beijing seemed very worried as she watched the news. Wensen was also watching the same news report, which mentioned that a rabbit band had been found at the crime scene. Wensen was shocked because he remembered seeing a similar rabbit band with Beijing. He recalled that on the day of the incident, Beijing had seemed to be in a hurry to go somewhere. Later that night, Wensen was visiting the crime scene and he saw Beijing there, searching for something. He was stunned to see her but quickly hid. Back in his room, he broke down crying. He was worried Beijing might get caught up in the case. He immediately called his mother and told her that he was not going abroad anymore. Next day, the doctor informed her that her mother's condition had worsened. Beijing became even more worried about her mother. Sitting by her side, her mother reassured her not to worry and said she would be fine. But Beijing stepped outside and told herself that because of the recent time travel, too many things had changed. She realized that if she wanted to prevent more changes, she would have to return to her own time as soon as possible. Beijing went to the beach with Chao and Gagi, where the three of them had gone to spend some time together. Gagi started explaining that she had forgotten her drawing materials, which was why she had called Wensen to bring them for her. Wensen also arrived with the supplies and handed them over to Gagi, but Wensen didn't even look at Beijing. Chao then suggested that they should collect some seashells there. He even asked Wensen about it, and after a moment, Wensen agreed. As they were walking, Beijing told Wensen that he seemed different. Wensen replied that it was because he was leaving for abroad the next day and he was feeling quite happy about it. Beijing was shocked and asked if he was really leaving the next day. Wensen confirmed it and then walked away, silently thinking to himself, "Beijing, please forgive me, but maybe staying apart from each other is really what's best for us." Lin was at the hospital and he told Beijing that she had been called to the police station because Wensen had informed the police about everything. Beijing became very worried. She wondered what information Wensen could have given the police. She feared that he might have falsely taken the blame upon himself to protect her. Panicked, she ran to the police station and asked about Wensen. The officer told her that Wensen had provided them with all the information about Boss Lee and his associates, along with the evidence of all the crimes they had committed. That evidence was going to be very helpful in arresting all of them. The officer also explained that they had called her brother Lin so that he could testify about everything Boss Lee had done to him. Hearing this, Beijing finally calmed down a little. Afterward, she went to Wensen's house to meet him, but he wasn't there. As she walked along the road, she kept calling him non-stop, but Wensen didn't answer her calls. At that moment, Beijing remembered what had really happened that night. In reality, it wasn't anyone else who had killed Boss Lee. It was one of his own men. Boss Lee had betrayed his own gang members, and one of them couldn't tolerate it. Furious at the betrayal, he killed Boss Lee and set the place on fire. Beijing had secretly witnessed everything because that night she had gone there to plead with Boss Lee not to harm Wensen now. Beijing is searching for Wensen everywhere. She arrived at the school and sat at his desk where she found a card from her diary. Seeing it made her cry even harder. She realized that Wensen had already found out everything. Meanwhile, Wensen was at the airport about to leave for abroad. As he walked through the terminal, he thought back on how he had collected all the evidence against Boss Lee and his men, not just to bring down Boss Lee, but to have the entire gang arrested. He had handed all that proof over to Lin, asking him to give it to the police. Wensen had also told Lin not to let Beijing know that he was helping because she didn't want to accept any help from him. Lin had agreed, but after Boss Lee's death, he hadn't gone to the police with the evidence. So in the end, Wensen had to go to the police station himself to submit the evidence, ensuring there would be no future problems. As a result, the police were able to arrest the man who had killed Boss Lee and also the entire gang. As for Ma Ji, he had managed to escape any consequences because he had left the gang at the right time, thanks to Beijing convincing him. Now we saw Gagi calling Beijing. She showed her a message that said Wensen was at the airport and was really leaving today. Beijing was completely shocked. Without wasting a second, she rushed toward the airport. Finneously, Beijing arrived at the airport and she saw Wensen, who was just about to leave. However, he stopped when he noticed her and smiled. Beijing too looked at him with a smile, silently apologizing in her heart. At that moment, Wensen told her that he liked her. He had already found out from her secret diary that saying these words would bring an end to her time travel, and he knew he would only be able to meet this version of Beijing again in the future, in the year 2021. As soon as Wensen confessed his feelings, Beijing's time travel came to an end, and she returned to her own timeline, back to the year 2021. At the present, Beijing was having breakfast with her family. Everything in her life appeared to have returned to normal. Her mother, who had been unwell before, was now much healthier. Beijing had also begun working hard at her workplace, which made her boss very pleased. He often praised her and said that everyone should learn from her dedication and commitment. Later, there was an Art About Day event where Beijing saw Zhan Yu and Tanji, who had become a couple. Tanji was acting playfully, and Zhan Yu was trying to convince her to calm down. Seeing them happy together made Beijing feel genuinely glad for them. She thought to herself that it was wonderful they were still together and happy. Then, Chao and Gagi were meeting after a long time. Both had become successful in their lives and still seemed to have feelings for each other. Chao asked Gagi if she would like to have dinner with him that night. Gagi happily agreed, which made Chao extremely happy. Next, Beijing had arrived at school for the graduation ceremony. There, she met Gagi and her father, Teacher Ming. Their relationship had improved a lot compared to before. Beijing felt happy seeing Gagi smiling alongside her father. When the ceremony began, Beijing was called on stage to give a speech. She spoke beautifully about friendship and how her friends had always supported her. She talked about how they had all stayed together through everything, becoming each other's strength. During her speech, flashbacks of many happy moments from the past were shown, memories of all the good times they had shared. Now she was truly happy and felt no regrets in her heart. When her speech ended, everyone clapped for her. After that, the scene shifted to Beijing's workplace. Her boss was telling everyone about a test organized by the Animal Protection and Foreign Rescue Organization. He explained that whoever passed the test would become a veterinary doctor, which was a well-paying and highly respected job. Beijing decided right away that she would take the test at any cost. She started studying with full dedication, and eventually the day of the interview arrived. Beijing gave her best during the interview, and it went very well. As she was leaving, she found herself thinking about Wenson. She hoped that wherever he was happy and doing well. She also thought about how she wished he were there with her, especially with the first snowfall of winter about to begin. Later, while she was traveling home on a bus, her boss called her. He informed her that out of the entire rescue team, she was the only one who had passed the test. Hearing this, Beijing became extremely happy. She got off the bus with a bright smile and began walking. It was New Year's Day, marking the beginning of 2022. At that moment, the first snowfall began. Seeing the snow made Beijing feel even happier. She walked along joyfully, thinking to herself that she still missed Wensen very much. She admitted in her heart that she still liked him as much as ever and wished he would come back soon so they could spend their lives together. While lost in these thoughts, she was crossing the road when suddenly someone covered her with an umbrella from behind. Beijing stopped in her tracks, her heart racing, knowing deep down that it could only be Wensen. She felt a surge of happiness, realizing he had finally returned from abroad to China. As she turned around, she saw that it was indeed Wensen. With this heartwarming reunion, their story came to a happy ending.